Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto has ancestors of Namikaze and Senju clan bloodline. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Archive Fanfiction 8712 and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1 Blue Gray Purple. A peaceful sunset in a little village turned medic/supply outpost during the Second Shinobi War located on a strategic river that ran through the land of waterfalls. Sitting on the dock looking out toward the river were two people. The first one a pregnant blonde in her early 20s. The second was a young man with what could be described as a type of lavender hair. It was too light to be classified as blue and too dark to be classified as gray. The woman was sitting on the edge of the dock with her bare feet hanging over. Occasionally the water would lap the bottom softly when the waves rolled, and which started to occur more recently as the tide came in. The man was laying on the dock on his stomach, his head turned on the side with one ear resting against the enlarged womb of the woman who had opened up her gray vest, so the only barrier between her womb and his ear was minimal. One arm had wrapped behind her back to join with the one that was lying across her thighs. His eyes were closed, his expression one of bliss. Slowly the man opened his eyes and let out a soft sigh before closing his eyes again. Tsunade, you know you didn't have to come all the way out here. You are almost due for birth. Also, it's not safe for you to be moving around so much, and in the middle of a battlefield. Nonetheless, he softly spoke. One could almost detect a worried tone. You worry too much, my love. There's two reasons you need not worry. Firstly, I was not given the rank of Sannin for being weak and helpless, you know, and two, I'm known all around as the greatest medic Nin for a reason. Also, we are in a medic outpost, which is on the list of top priorities to protect, she replied with a smug look on her face, and you know what? Who else would watch over you and making sure you don't get yourself injured? He chuckled lightly, then he reached inside his shirt, pulling out the Shodai Hokage's necklace. Isn't this enough good luck to keep me safe, Tsunade? As his face broke out into a grin, Dan tilted his head so he could look at Tsunade. He scanned her face, then it happened, aqua eyes meeting hazel ones. Just another part of her he loved so much. Every time their eyes would connect they fell in love all over again. I can't bear to lose her, he thought to himself. If I do, I don't know how I would live on. But now it's no longer just her I must protect, but also the baby now. Tsunade watched him lost in thought, then slowly she ran her finger through his soft blue locks. Some blue locks, she questions herself. Or was it lavender? No, it's too light to be that gray, perhaps? Possibly baby blue, she shakes her head. This is what drew her to him in the first place when they had first met in the medical academy shortly after she had begun studying medical ninjutsu back in Konoha. His hair was what caught her eye almost immediately. He always stood out in a crowd as if he wore a kill me orange jumpsuit. She shuddered at that thought. Who in their right mind would wear something like that? Her first belief on Dan was that he was some of genetic freak of nature. Like who in the world had hair that was some sort of weird combination of blue/gray/purple? The closest she ever saw was that girl that the Hyuga boy Hayashi had the biggest crush on. Hitomi was her name, I believe. Her hair had a dark bluish tint which was unlike anybody in Konoha and was only surpassed in weirdness by Dan's. Maybe I should ask Orochimaru next time she saw him. He was into this kind of weird stuff anyway. She wanted nothing less but to study at that time his hair follicles and DNA, but as time progressed slowly their relationship blossomed into love, and now here she was sitting on a dock in the middle of a war, almost 9 months pregnant. Maybe she could get Jiraiya to write a book about their relationship when the war was over. His first book, although had great values, was not a big hit. He should just stick to what he was good at, which was being a perv. Immediately her hand shot up to her mouth, though while not noticing she had yanked a good few pieces of Dan's hair out. In the process during her pregnancy her chakra control had become unstable at best, placing her in weird situations where she would gain super strength randomly when she didn't want to. This was one of those moments, leaving Dan in a waterfall of tears and one hand reaching out toward her face while twitching madly. Ignoring Dan's pain she shook her head violently and thought, no. She wouldn't let him write a story about their relationship because then they would have to go into all the details about their life behind closed doors. If some of these stories got out, it would reveal a side of Tsunade nobody other than Dan had seen before, most likely destroying her reputation, and she could not do that to what remained of the Senju line. Now that she thought about it, she for one wasn't too sure when specifically she had gotten pregnant. Was it because they had decided to get a little frisky in the unisex hot spring, or was it after they decided to have a short romp in the grass after their picnic on the statue of her grandfather's head? Hell, it could have even been the time where she had been not seen him for a whole week, and the moment he had returned she happened to been doing an autopsy on a dead Iwa Kunoichi's body. Although she was the one who had initiated it, Dan at first had been a bit hesitant, telling her it kind of felt like he was cheating on her while doing it on top of the dead Kunoichi's body. She immediately waved him off, saying they could slap her around a little bit without repercussions. She was done with the autopsy anyway. Turns out that was not the smartest idea. After a few chakra-enhanced slaps from Tsunade, for some strange reason her eyelids opened up, revealing her cold dead eyes, instantly freaking them both out, instantly throwing any mood for intercourse out the window. Yes, she could probably cross that off her list of where and when in the hell did she get pregnant? Making a mental note to think about it later, she refocused herself and looked down at Dan, who was staring up at her. One of his eyes was twitching slightly. Is something wrong, my love? She asked him lovingly. How instantly snapping out of his stupor, Dan looked at her and replied, Tsunade, have you decided on any more suggestions on what you want to name our son? Tsunade shook her head lightly, then turned her gaze towards the river. Not yet, I want to see him first, maybe then I will gain some inspiration. Dan chuckled at her, then also turning towards the river. Regardless, you should have still had some names prepared. You don't want our son to be wrongly named after something you came up with off the top of your head. Tsunade scowled at him a bit, then thought, he's right, I should have some names thought up, but with your funny genetics and hair color, Cammy knows what our son would look like. Suddenly she felt something poke her forehead, where her creation rebirth seal was. She found Dan had gently tapped the seal with his finger. Then he said, you know you shouldn't frown so much, it will give you all those wrinkles old people have, then you would need to create a new just to hide them. He then proceeded to laugh lightly, which was rewarded with a bop on his head from Tsunade. He inwardly thanked Cammy that it wasn't one of her super strength ones. As they slowly watched the sun disappear behind the horizon in tranquility, it was soon to be broken by a messenger running towards them. Dan-sama, Dan-sama, the messenger yelled. As he ran closer toward them, when he finally reached them, he had bent over with his hands on his knees trying to catch his breath. In one of his hands was clutching a note. Whoa, now take a few breaths, we don't want you passing out before you deliver your message now, do we? Dan said while lifting his head off of Tsunade's lap and smiling at the messenger. Finally catching his breath, the messenger said, although still a bit winded, urgent message from headquarters, Dan-sama, as he handed over the note. Taking the note, he sits up and begins to read it while Tsunade reads from over his shoulder. Urgent news. Enemy IWA troops have begun to mobilize along the Western Front. We require all battle-ready medics to deploy to the front lines in order to prepare to assist our standing ground forces. Headquarters. Placing his hand on his forehead, Dan takes a deep breath. Looking up from the note toward the messenger, he smiles and says to him, Good work, you have saved many lives today by bringing this message to me so quickly. You can go now, I will be leaving right after I finish a couple of things here. Handing the note back to him. The messenger salutes Dan, then bows towards Tsunade and immediately runs off toward a different direction, no doubt to alert others of the situation. Dan then turns towards Tsunade and looks into her eyes, then before saying, My love, I have to go now, they need me to help in the war. Reaching out and grasping her hands in his before continuing, I wish I could be here when our son is born, but we live in a harsh time or war and I have no choice but to put Konoha before you and our son. Tsunade, with a few tears rolling down her face, takes her right hand out of his and softly caresses his face, then after a short sigh she says, I understand, Dan, at times of war the village comes before any of our personal matters. In truth, I would love to have you here to witness our son's birth. But as long as you promise to come back to us safe and in one piece, all will be forgiven. Memories of Nawaki's death come rushing back to her, only to be broken when Dan leaned in and placed a kiss of love and care on her lips, but too soon they had separated. With one last smile, Dan stood back up and shunned Shin away in a swirl of leaves. Suddenly Tsunade's eyes widened in realization. She softly whispered to the wind, He didn't promise me. As tears began to run down her face again, she continued to sit at the port, staring out toward the river, silently sobbing and praying her love would return safe to her. Meanwhile, in a forest some miles away, Dan was running across the treetops, while tears were also flowing down his face, also whispering into the wind. I'm sorry, Tsunade, I couldn't promise you, but if I ever want to become Hokage, that is something I can't promise you. He increased his speed as he towards the deployment zone in order to prepare for war. Chapter 2, False Light. 2 weeks later. It has been 2 weeks since Dan left to the front lines, and 2 days ago Tsunade gave birth to a baby boy. The talk among the hospital is that Tsunade still refuses to name the baby. Anytime anybody would ask her why she didn't, she would give them the same excuse over and over, that she wants to wait for Dan to come back before they decide what to name him. Tsunade is now lying on a hospital bed with a blanket wrapped around her baby, who has a small beautiful tuft of blonde hair. But what particularly catch her eyes are the soft, innocent ocean blue eyes that remind her of that day at the port with Dan. She softly mumbles to the baby, You know, you remind me so much of Nawaki. Tsunade softly runs her hand across the baby's face, who responds with a yawn. Maybe one day with your help I can move on from his death, Tsunade thought to herself. Suddenly hearing running and yelling outside the hospital, Tsunade stands up quickly but with grace to ensure the baby's safety and moves toward the window. Staring out, she sees numerous ninjas running across the field toward the hospital. Some had their comrades slung across their shoulders. Others were carrying a stretcher which held the more wounded combatants. She squinted her eyes, hoping to find Dan among the medics who were carrying back wounded ninjas. Not having any luck, she turns away from the window and places the baby softly into a crib by a bed. Once placed down, the baby almost immediately falls into a peaceful nap. Tsunade smiles, then leans in, planting a soft kiss on his forehead, then whispers to him, Now stay here and be good, I need to go and find your father. Smiling softly, she turns away from the crib and walks toward the door to her room. Opening it, she proceeds down the hallway toward the entrance. Upon nearing the entrance, Tsunade is greeted by the sight and sounds of pure chaos. Nurses and doctors ran among each other, dodging one another with such grace and balance that could only come from prolonged exposure to these situations. They were all attempting to treat multiple patients at once. Tsunade hoped that they didn't overexert themselves, lest them find themselves among the wounded, they themselves needing treatment. Taking a quick scan around, she saw ninjas laid scattered around the hospital entrance in a multitude of positions, some laying on their backs, some sitting against the wall. Tsunade had long since grown accustomed to these miserable scenes that accompanied war hand in hand. Among the numberless amount of sounds in the room, there was one Tsunade picked out immediately above all others: the painful sounds of a child crying. Maybe a reflex due to her newly gained motherly instinct, she thought to herself. It wasn't her son crying. She quickly looked around, attempting to find the source. The scene proceeded to tear her heart out. This little girl, who looked no older than 4 years old, had already been through so much pain. Watching the little girl holding on to a man's leg, unable to remove her eyes from the body that laid on a stretcher on the floor with a white tarp covering it, Tsunade knew scenes like this were all too common in a field hospital. All she could do for them was giving them her prayers. Steeling herself, she knew that her top priority at the moment was finding somebody that would tell her where Dan was. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw a familiar face. Togi, she exclaimed, running over to him. She watches as he leaned up against the wall and slowly slumped down to the floor, holding his bleeding stomach. Upon reaching him, she kneeled over, placing a hand on his shoulder. Togi, are you okay? Where is the rest of the medic corps? Where is Dan? Tsunade said in one breath, but the last question was definitely more forceful. Being broken out of his stupor, Togi tilts his head up to look at Tsunade. Lady Tsunade. Togi grimaced out. We had no idea where they come from. One moment we were healing the wounded troops, the next an explosion ripped apart our east flank. Before we could even blink, we were being overrun by IWA shinobi. Togi then began to attempt to heal his stomach with the mystic palm technique. At first his hands were coated in a steady greenish chakra per usual, but after a few seconds the green chakra began to waver until completely vanishing. Dropping his head, he lets out a low groan. Tsunade was about to say something to Togi, but he quickly raised his hand up to stop Tsunade from speaking. Without making eye contact with Tsunade, Togi continued on. Lady Tsunade, you have to listen to me carefully. I was with Dan when they first attacked, but in the chaos we were separated. By the time I had found him again, he was fighting off multiple IWA shinobi to cover our retreating troops, but there was just too many of them, and Dan was already low on chakra from healing the wounded. He was caught by a blindside attack and he fell. Togi finished the last part faintly. Tsunade gasps out loud, her hand shooting up to her mouth, tears threatening to spill out of her eyes. Togi could see how much pain she was in, but he knew he had to finish telling her the rest of the events that happened. Lady Tsunade, I was able to get to his body and bring it back, but not before a stray kunai wounded me. The moment I got here, they took him to the intensive CA. Not even giving Togi the chance to finish, Tsunade was already up and attempting to run her way to where Dan was. But her eyes were clouded by her tears as she ran down the hallway, running into objects she couldn't make out what they were, other people or just inanimate objects. Damn it! She grumbled out loud as her attempts to wipe the tears from her eyes were fruitless. As quickly as she wiped them away, new ones would instantly fill in their place. The once proud Senju princess was now bumbling her way down the hospital hallway, crashing into people, equipment, and walls. Please! Please be okay. Please! Tsunade constantly repeated out loud, as she rushed her way to get to the ICU. But then she saw it somehow, though the haze of tears alight at the end of the cave. There they were, the doors leading into the intensive care unit. She had no clue how she got there, but at that moment she didn't care. All that mattered was getting to Dan now. Immediately bursting through the doors of the ICU, she saw what made her blood turn cold. Her eyes instantly widened in shock as the love of her life, Dan, laid on the surgical table, so pale, unmoving, gashes littering his body, and the worst was the blood that began to pool on the table from all of his wounds. The world had suddenly slowed down around Tsunade. She could hear her own heart beating. Thump. 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 Had her heart stopped? Why couldn't she hear her heart anymore? Tsunade wondered to herself. Suddenly her senses were shutting down on her. Everything she heard was garbled. It sounded like she was underwater. Her nostrils were filled with the smell of her own unrelenting tears, and the worst of all was that everything around her was cold. It was like as if something had sucked all the warmth in the world away. The doctors, hearing somebody crash their way into the ICU, all turned to see Tsunade standing there in shock, crying. One of the nurses approached her and said, Lady Tsunade, what are you doing here? You are in no shape to be running around. You just had a baby a few days ago. We will take care of Dan. Please go back to your room. By the tone of the nurse's voice, she was clearly worried about Tsunade. By that time, the other nurses and doctors had already refocused their efforts in attempt to heal Dan. Tsunade, still unmoving, was staring at what was unfolding before her eyes. She could see that the wounds all over Dan's body weren't healing up fast enough. He was losing too much blood. Her pained distress quickly turned into anger. Tsunade then proceeded to roar out, "You're not healing him properly," while at the same time making a move toward Dan's body. One of the nurses moved in front of Tsunade and said to her in firm voice but slight feared tone, "Lady Tsunade, you can't come over to the body, you aren't sterilized." Tsunade hushed her by pushing the nurse to the side. "I don't care if I'm not sterilized. I have to heal Dan because clearly you aren't doing your jobs properly." Tsunade all but yelled out the last part as tears began to well up again. Tsunade rushed over to the table where Dan was pushing aside the doctors and nurses. Placing a hand over a particularly deep gash on his chest, she attempted to heal him with the mystic palm technique. She saw the wound stitching back together slowly. Seeing this, she let herself have a small bout of relief, but that would be her downfall. Much like how Togi's technique had begun wavering, so did hers. Tsunade tried to keep the green light steady, but to no avail. It vanished. Her eyes widened in shock. Bringing her hands up near her face, she stared at them. Noticing the blood on her hands, she begins to shake violently. "Why?" she screamed out. She brings her hands and wraps them around herself. Letting herself fall onto Dan's body, she then proceeded sobbing into Dan's chest, disregarding any of the wounds on it. "Tsunade," she heard faintly. Looking up, she sees Dan struggling to open his eyes, trying to speak to her. "Dan!" Tsunade sobs out. Lifting her head off his chest, she moves over near his face, staring into Dan's half-opened eyes. "Tsunade, my love, how is he? What does he look like?" Dan asked clearly in pain. Tsunade just stared at him, her mouth wide open, but no words came out. "Please, my love, tell me how he looks like. Is he okay?" Dan groaned out a little softer this time. Dan, Tsunade stuttered out, still refusing to answer Dan's questions about the baby. Deep inside, even though she didn't want to, a part of her felt this was the baby's fault. Before she could push these thoughts aside, they came suddenly, full force, bombarding her brain. If she was never pregnant, then she would have never had needed to give birth. If she didn't have to give birth, then her chakra control wouldn't be messed up. If her chakra control wasn't messed up, then I could have saved Dan. It's all his fault. These thoughts kept repeating inside Tsunade's mind. A wet hand reached up to her face and softly caressed it. "I see, I'm sorry, Tsunade," remarked Dan after watching the emotions on Tsunade's face play out. He misinterpreted it as there was a complication with the birth and the baby had died. But it was too late for Tsunade. She was already gone mentally. Never even realizing Dan's breath slowing down, Dan half-opened eyes slowly closing, his own will to live slowly disappearing until he took one final shuddered breath and one final blink, his eyes never to open again. Tsunade, never breaking out of her daze, stood up, lifting herself off the body of Dan, turned around facing the doctors and nurses. With a glazed look in her eyes, her arms falling to her sides with blood still dripping off her hands, walked out the ICU without turning to anybody. 3 hours later, outside Tsunade's room. Crying is heard from inside the room. A nurse on her nightly rounds, hearing this, moves toward the door. Knocking on it softly, she says, "Lady Tsunade, is everything okay with the baby?" As she finishes, she places her ear on the door, straining to hear any sounds other than the crying. Knocking on the door once more, this time in a more rapid sequence, the nurse yells out, "Lady Tsunade, are you in there?" A look of worry washed over the nurse's face. Fumbling quickly with the door handle, she slides the door open. "Lady Tsunade!" she exclaims at the sight. OHNAO, what happens? Find out on the NXT episode of Dragon Bane Namikaze, Senju or Uzumaki. Holy crap, AOC. Togi Hyuga. Age 24. Chapter 3, Meet the Sanins. Staring into the dark room, the nurse could clearly see nobody was on the bed. Even the bed looked like it was just made recently too. Remembering why she came in here in the first place, she looked at the crib. Using the light coming through the window to guide her, she walked over to the crib. Looking down, the nurse saw the little blonde-haired baby crying. Picking him up, he immediately stopped, but he was still letting out soft whimpers. With sorrow in her voice, she asked, "Where is your mom, little guy?" A voice coming from behind her said, "Tsunade is gone, she ran away." Dan dying was too much for her to handle. Turning around, she sees the toad Sannin Jiraiya, leaning against the open door. After giving him a short bow, she says, "What, how could she run away? Lady Tsunade has to fulfill her duties as a mother. No offense, Lord Jiraiya, but I don't believe Lady Tsunade to be so irresponsible." Chuckling, he replies to her, "You don't know Tsunade like I do." Then began to Jiraiya move toward the nurse. When he was in front of her, he raises his hands toward her. The nurse takes a step back, having heard the rumors how Jiraiya was kind of a pervert. Bringing her hands closer to her body, she feels the baby snuggle against her. Immediately, she realizes what he wants. Reluctantly, she hands the baby over to Jiraiya. She had grown quite fond of the baby, even though she had only met him sparsely while helping Tsunade, and had only actually held him now. It was something about those sky blue eyes drew her to him. After handing the baby over to Jiraiya, she asks him, "Who's going to look after him then if Lady Tsunade is gone?" In reality, she wanted to look after him, maybe even adopt him. Although she was a nurse, she was still a bit on the young side, not really grasping the concept of what it would take to raise a child. Without looking up at her from the baby, Jiraiya replied, "I have a couple of ideas of what to do with him. You don't have to worry, he will be in good hands." Jiraiya looks up to see a look of sadness and sorrow in the nurse's face, then says, "You want to look after him?" "Huh. Well, sort of. He's so cute, and it's so sad that his dad is dead and his mom has run away. Truthfully speaking, I wouldn't mind taking care of him as my own son," she replied to Jiraiya. "Well, we could always look after him together," Jiraiya says while giving her a grin and a wink. Hearing his comment, the nurse gives him a glare and mentally calls him a pervert, not having the guts to call the great Toad Sannin one out loud. Seeing her expression change from sadness to anger in an instant, Jiraiya can't help but laugh out loud, prompting a small moan from the baby for having its sleep disturbed. Jiraiya looks back down at the baby and says, "Well, I will leave that offer for you on the table, but you don't have to worry, I'm going to take him somewhere where he will get both motherly and fatherly affection. Regardless, if you want to come along," Jiraiya finishes giggling. The nurse's expression changes to shock. "Oh," she asks. "Now where would that be, if you don't mind me asking, Lord Jiraiya?" Looking back up at the nurse, Jiraiya answers, "Somehow I feel like I can trust you, so I'm going to tell you where I'm taking him, but you have to promise me you're not going to tell anybody. This is for his safety," he finishes sternly. The nurse nods lightly. Seeing that Jiraiya is being serious, she then says, "I promise you, Lord Jiraiya, I won't tell anybody where you are going to bring him. And what do you mean for his safety?" Jiraiya leans in towards the nurse a little, then whispers to her, "I'm going to bring him to Mount Myroboku and have the Toad Sages look after him. I will still teach him and be there for him when he's growing up. But when I am unable to do it myself, the Toad Sages can be there in my place." Seeing the nurse's eyes widen in shock at this piece of information, Jiraiya continues, "And regarding his safety, there are numerous people who want to kidnap him, hurt him, even kill him." The nurse gasps out loud, and somehow to Jiraiya's surprise her eyes grow even larger in shock and concern. Chuckling lightly to himself, he continues, "Think about it. Not only is he the son of one of the legendary Sannin, whom is renowned for her super strength and her skills in medicinal jutsus, but also the fact there is a chance the boy has the Mokuton abilities passed down to him, being a prime candidate for people like Kumo to kidnap and turn him into a walking Mokuton baby-producing machine." Finishing with his explanation, he watches the multiple expressions run over the nurse's face till it's settled with understanding. "I understand." Jiraiya smiles at her, then says, "Perfect, then I would like to ask you to go pack up all of Tsunade's things. She won't be coming back for them, and some basic necessities for the baby. I'm going to take a walk with him. When I come back, I will pick up the stuff and get out of your hair." Giving the nurse a perverted wink, he turns around with the baby in his arms, proceeds to leave the hospital. Jiraiya, leaving the hospital, begins to walk toward the forest, near the dock Dan and Tsunade were 2 weeks ago. As he walks, he reminisces on his encounter with Tsunade earlier on. Flashback. Earlier that night, in a forest a couple of miles away from the medic camp, Tsunade was trudging through the undergrowth. One look in her eyes and you could tell she was clearly lost in thought, her body just moving on its own accord. Dangling in her hand was the first Hokage's necklace. Then a voice came out of the shadows. "Tsunade?" it asked. Tsunade's mind, not registering her name being called, continued to walk, until a man landed in front of her just a couple of feet away. Slowly Tsunade looked up at the man, not even caring slightly for her safety, instantly recognizing it to be one of her teammates, Jiraiya. "Tsunade," Jiraiya said with a smirk, "I thought I sensed your chakra out here as I was going to visit you and the baby." Upon hearing the word baby, Tsunade's expression suddenly changed into one of rage. So much that Jiraiya winced and took a step back, fearful for his well-being. "Don't mention that thing," Tsunade spat out. Jiraiya looked at her, clearly confused, but was able to stutter out, "What in the world are you talking about, Tsunade? Just a month ago you couldn't stop talking about how much you loved him and couldn't wait to meet him. Now all of a sudden you are spitting its name out like it somehow killed your family." Out of nowhere, Tsunade lets out a cry of rage and swings her hand at a tree, instantly shattering it into thousands of pieces. By this time Jiraiya was visibly shaking. In a dark tone of voice, Tsunade replies to Jiraiya, "Because he did kill what's left of my family." With a troubled look, Jiraiya softly said, "Wait, Dan is dead? If he is, how is it the baby's fault?" With rage evident in her voice, Tsunade replied, "You're not a medic, so you wouldn't know, but during pregnancy and after giving birth there is a chance that your chakra control is completely messed up. And because my control was so messed up," Tsunade whispering the next part, "I couldn't heal Dan when he was dying on the surgery table." After a moment of thought, Jiraiya sucks his teeth in annoyance with Tsunade, then says, "Pathetic." Tsunade stared at Jiraiya with a pissed and annoyed look on her face, then remarked, "What did you just call me, you pervert?" Yelling out the word pervert. Jiraiya replied to her in an angry tone, "Did I stutter, Tsunade? I'm pretty sure you've heard what I called you, But just in case you might have somehow missed it, I'll tell you again. I called you pathetic because that's what you are. Tsunade was taken aback by this. Never had Jiraiya yelled at her or called her anything demeaning other than a few perverted pickup lines here and there. Now she was pissed. Who did this white-haired pervert think he was? Balling up her fist, she was about to swing at him when he interrupted her. Jiraiya said with his arms crossed across his chest, "Look at you. I know you are one, but I would have never taken you for the spoiled princess type. But here's the proof in front of me. You're a grown woman and one of the legendary Sannin, and you get pissed off just because of one word." Jiraiya shakes his head, then once more regains eye contact with Tsunade. "You truly are pathetic." Although on the outside Tsunade was pissed off, inside of her she was hurting. Not able to hold it in anymore, she tilted her head toward the ground. Although her eyes were clenched shut, tears were starting to leak out. Then she suddenly jerked her head up and stared back, and Jiraiya, tears still streaming from her eyes, and yelled out, "So what? So what if that's exactly what I am? I am a spoiled little princess. That's what I've been called all my life, haven't I, Jiraiya? You have no idea how I feel right now. What would you ever know about losing somebody you loved? Well, this is your chance. Go take care of that damn baby, if you care about it so much. I don't care anymore. Then when it dies, maybe you'll understand how I feel." After finishing her rant, Tsunade takes off running through the forest. Jiraiya watches her till she's out of his sight, then turns toward a tree and says, "I tried, didn't I?" Dropping down from the tree, Orochimaru replies to him, "Yes, you did, but couldn't you have gone easier on her? That's what I would have expected of you after realizing Dan was dead." Turning away from Jiraiya, he stokes his chin light, before continuing, "At least that's what I would have done." Jiraiya lighting scoffs at him, then replies, "What good would that have done her? She isn't a civilian, Orochimaru, she's a shinobi, one that should understand our lifestyle and the consequences and sacrifices we must pay to live it." Orochimaru places his hand on his forehead, then says, "Still, she is our teammate. Your words were too harsh. How are we going to explain this to Sensei?" Staring up at the sky, Jiraiya closes his eyes, then breathes in before replying to Orochimaru, "I'll think of something to tell him. Why don't you go and try your hand at attempting to consult her? I'm going to the medic camp to check up on the baby." Orochimaru nods his head, then proceeds to run through the forest to look for Tsunade. Jiraiya, taking one more deep breath, proceeds to continue his way toward the medic outpost. End flashback. Jiraiya continues his way through the forest, with the baby snuggled up against him, deep in thought. Jiraiya stops as a figure lands beside him. Without turning to look at him, he says, "So how did it go with consulting Tsunade?" Orochimaru let out a sigh, then said, "You really got her mad, Jiraiya. I was dodging her punches for a good 20 minutes, before she would even talk to me." Jiraiya lets out a light chuckle upon hearing that, but stopped immediately when Orochimaru gave him one of his infamous snake-eyed glares. Orochimaru continues on, slightly annoyed with Jiraiya for taking light of Tsunade's situation, "And even when I was able to talk to her, she refused to take my advice to come back for the baby's sake." Now it was Orochimaru's turn to let out a light chuckle. "You know what that means, Jiraiya. You're the one who's going to have to take care of the baby." Sighing softly to himself, Jiraiya nods his head before saying, "I kind of expected this the moment I called Tsunade out, but worry not, I already have a plan for him." Orochimaru quirked an eyebrow before saying, "Oh, do you now, Jiraiya? I hope you're not going to use him for your own perverted gains." Orochimaru suddenly wished he hadn't asked that question when Jiraiya began snickering. Turning to Orochimaru, Jiraiya said to him with a grin, "As great as that idea is, I won't do that to him. And what would happen if one day Tsunade comes back and finds out what I did with her son?" Jiraiya then hands the baby over to Orochimaru, who takes the baby with a look of confusion on his face. Then after a few seconds he realizes something and yells at Jiraiya, "Your plan is to make me look after him?" Chuckling, Jiraiya shakes his head, then answers him, "That might be the easy way out, but the answer is no. I don't plan on leaving him with you. I just need both my hands to do this." He bites his thumb to draw a bit of blood, then runs through some hand signs. Before slamming his palm into the ground, he yells out Kuchiyos no Jutsu. Emerging from the smoke is a short yellow and purple toad named Shima. She looks around before she spots Jiraiya. She asks Jiraiya, "Jiraiya-chan, you better have a good excuse for summoning me out here. I was just relaxing after dinner." Watching Jiraiya take the baby back from Orochimaru, Shima tilts her head and asks, "You had a baby with Orochimaru-kun?" Jiraiya instantly turned pale, while Orochimaru on the other hand turned green, because there was no way for him to turn any physically paler. After they both mentally blocked any images of what was brewing in their minds after Shima's statement from appearing, Jiraiya said to Shima with an annoyed tone, "Kamiya no, I don't know if it's different for toads or something, but for humans that's not physically possible." After composing himself, Orochimaru also says to Shima, "I for one have to agree with Jiraiya. Shima-sama, what you said will fuel many unpleasant nightmares to come." Jiraiya suddenly remember why he summoned Shima in the first place, interrupts Orochimaru, Actually, Ma, I didn't summon you here to give me an Orochimaru nightmares, but I need a favor from you and Pa. Questionably, Ma looks at him, then jumps upon his shoulders to have a better look at the boy. And I'm guessing, whatever favor you want me to do somehow pertains to this little tadpole in your hands? Jiraiya takes one of his free hands and scratches behind his head, then replies to Shima. Have to get up earlier than that to get one past you, Ma? Well, this is actually. Before Jiraiya could explain what happened, Orochimaru cuts him off. This is a baby of a good friend of ours, and their final wish before they died was to look after him in their place. So after much deliberating, we thought that the toads helping to look after him would be the best idea. To further convince her, Jiraiya adds in, well, yeah, and I don't think snakes can take care of human babies too well. You know the whole no hands thing, and poison fangs not the best environment for a baby. A tick mark appeared above Orochimaru's eye but was unnoticed by both Ma and Jiraiya. Ma stared at the baby boy a little longer before she nodded her head. Turning to Jiraiya, she says, I see. Well, I'll go back and inform the others to expect the little tadpole, then I will reverse summon you to Mount Myaboku. Then turning to the baby, and you my little tadpole, I'll see you later, okay, giggling a bit before she vanished in a puff of smoke. Jiraiya looked over at Orochimaru and asked him, why didn't you let me tell her what really happened and whose baby this is? Orochimaru looked down at the ground in dismay. Not looking up to Jiraiya, he replied, there's no need to burden her or the child with the truth. Still staring at the ground, he says in a very saddened voice, and the truth is that I don't believe Tsunade will ever come back for him. When I spoke to her, I could feel the hatred coming from her whenever I spoke about the baby. Finally tilting his head back up to look at Jiraiya, so I infuse the hope in him that one day his mother will come back for him. Jiraiya nods his head at Orochimaru, then lets out a deep sigh. Yeah, you're right, thanks for your help tonight. Looking back down at the baby, he continues, I'm sure he will appreciate it. After I'm done sorting out things in Mount Myaboku, I'll come back to Konoha and see you around and keep you updated on his developments. Orochimaru gives him a light smile, then answers him, yes, that would be nice, Jiraiya. I'll see you around and would just like to say good luck. After saying that, Orochimaru watches him poof away in a cloud of smoke. With that, Orochimaru turns and makes his way back to the medic outpost. Upon nearing it, he sees medics burning up bodies of the fallen to preserve their secrets. Watching them, he thinks to himself, death can be so cruel, while you yourself are released from life. You trap the ones that love you in a state of constant despair and hatred. Chuckling to himself, he then wonders, if only there was a way to forego death. Meanwhile, with Jiraiya in Mount Myaboku, watches as Ma and Pa play and care for the baby, he thinks to himself, I see now, great Toad Sage, why your prophecy was so important. To find a student to bring peace and end this unnecessary bloodshed. Suddenly remember the 3 Amigekure orphans. Maybe I have already found him. Remember Nagato specifically. Walking out to look at the night sky, he whispers to the stars, do me proud, Nagato, do me proud. Chapter 4, Deja Vu. 23-year time skip. In a forest outside of a partially destroyed Konoha, Jiraiya stood over 2 bodies. One is a man with blonde hair and a white trench coat, the other a woman with red hair and a white dress. While in Jiraiya's arm is a blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby sleeping. He looks down at the corpse of the man with tears in his eyes, then says, Minato Kushina. As tears ran down Jiraiya's face, he began to remember all the memories he had of Minato. The first time Minato called him dad, and how for a whole week Jiraiya couldn't stop smiling. The first few steps Minato had taken, Jiraiya remembers running down Mount Myaboku, telling anybody that would listen how, just by seeing how Minato walked, he was going to be the greatest shinobi ever. Oh, the irony of those words, Minato did turn out to be one of the greatest shinobi ever. But now that meant nothing. What did greatest shinobi mean when he was lying in front of Jiraiya dead, his soul sacrificed to seal the Kyuubi into his son? Though Jiraiya never told anybody about this. But the proudest moment of his life was not when Minato first became Hokage, but one that took place much earlier in his life, around the age of 8, when he first met his wife Kushina. Flashback. 14 years ago. Jiraiya was sitting in the dining room in one of the apartments he owned. It was small and quaint. He rarely ever used it much up until when he and Minato needed a place to stay so he could go to the academy every day. No point in reverse summoning him to Mount Myaboku every time he wanted to sleep. At the moment, he was finishing up one of us newer works, Ika Ika Paradise. His first book, The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi, wasn't selling very well. Apparently not many people believed in the ideals of promoting peace. I guess that's what war does to you, Jiraiya thought to himself with a sigh. But this book, Ika Ika Paradise, it was already a hit within the publishing company. Apparently the director couldn't get enough of the draft Jiraiya sent him. And to be honest, Jiraiya loved going out into the field to research for his books. Suddenly Jiraiya felt a tingling in his spine. His perimeter seals had gone off. Immediately he sealed up the book's draft and notes and grabbed a cup of tea. A second later the door burst open and a yellow blob rolled in, yes, literally rolling inside the house. After the momentum from the roll was gone, the blob proceeded to stop, face planting on the carpet in front of Jiraiya. Lifting his head off the carpet revealed an 8-year-old Minato, who jumped up to his feet, ran over to Jiraiya, gave him a hug, and jumped onto a seat across from him. "Hey Dad Geese, what?" Minato exclaimed. Jiraiya replied. "So this new girl got transferred to the academy today, and when I looked at her I got this really funny feeling in my stomach," Minato said really fast. Before Jiraiya could say anything, Minato added on, "Do you think I like her?" Jiraiya snickered, then replied, "Oh haha my boy, her first day in the academy, and you already putting the moves on her. You are a genuine ladies' man just like your old man," giving him a cheeky grin and a thumbs up. "So why don't you tell me a little about her?" Minato placed his hands on his chin in a thoughtful pose and said, "Well, she's kind of short-tempered, yells at whoever pisses her off, and she is really strong. I watched her beat up a bunch of boys that were making fun of her hair." Jiraiya flinches and thinks to himself, what in Kami's name, this girl sounds like Tsunade. He then asks Minato, "What do you see in her son?" Minato answered with a grin, "Well, on the outside she might be angry and mean, but on the inside I can tell she can be kind and caring and gentle. And she told the class that she's going to be the first female Hokage. She inspired me with her dream and determination." "Oh, does she now? You know that's quite a high mountain for her to climb, and if you play your cards right, maybe I'm sure she won't mind your help in achieving her goals," Jiraiya said with a wink. "Say, when are you going to bring her back home to meet me? I would love to meet the girl who captivated my son's heart." Minato blushes a little bit before replying to Jiraiya with his biggest grin yet, "I haven't even really talked to her yet, Dad, so I don't know." Jiraiya looks at him with one eye quirked up. "What are you waiting for then?" Jiraiya asks him. With a shocked look on his face, Minato jumps off his chair and is already halfway toward the door before turning around and saying to Jiraiya, "You're right, Dad, I'm going to go look for her right now, talk to her a bit, and ask if she wants to visit you." Jiraiya just stared with one of his eyes twitching as Minato ran out the door. Then he says to no one in particular, "What is with this boy? He's 8 years old, and he's already thinking about this girl like he's going to marry her. But then again, I could follow him and see how this turns out, and get some good research for a sequel." Giggling at his ingenious idea, he uses Henge to transform into a random Chunin and exits out the window. Jumping up to a roof, he follows Minato discreetly. From the rooftops he watches as Minato walks through town trying to find his girlfriend to be. Thinking to himself, Jiraiya notes, "This could be a good opening to my next book." Taking out his notepad, he scribbles something down. A young promising shinobi lost on the road of life walks through another village in his path, searching for meaning to his travels. Jiraiya looks up from writing and notices Minato approach a boy with long hair dressed in a formal kimono, whom is hiding behind a store's wall. With Minato notices a boy with long hair suspiciously hiding behind a wall, staring at a girl who was doing some shopping a few stores over. She had with bluish hair and pale lavender eyes. Minato walks up to the boy and stands next to him while also looking in the girl's direction, then asks him, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" The boy jumps up a couple feet, surprised that somebody noticed him, and immediately falls into a fighting stance, then sputters out, What the? Who's there?" Looking down, the boy notices a short blonde-haired boy staring at him with a confused look on his face. Seeing no evil intent coming from him, he drops his fighting stance. What surprised him was what the blonde-haired boy did next. Minato raised his hand out and stated, "Hi, my name is Minato Namikaze, what's yours? And why were you spying on that girl over there?" Suddenly the boy with long hair starts blushing and fidgets with the sleeves of his robe, then slowly raises his hand to shake Minato's hand. "My name is Hayashi Hyuga." Minato, still shaking his hand, says to him, "Pleased to meet you, Hayashi, but you still haven't told me why you were spying on that girl." Hayashi pulls his hand from Minato's and begins scratching the back of his head, then replies, "Well, you see, I wanted to talk to her, but I don't know how to start." He blushes, then looks down at the ground. Minato, with a look of realization on his face, announces to Hayashi, "Oh, why didn't you just say so? Here, let me help you." Hayashi's head jerks up and tries to stop Minato, but it was already too late. The boy had somehow teleported over to her and was already engaged in a conversation with her. Suddenly Hayashi becomes angry with himself, thinking to himself, "Why can't I talk to her like how Minato is?" Hayashi is broken out of his stupor when he notices Minato and the girl staring at him, while Minato is pointing at him. Upon seeing the girl giggle, Hayashi turns a shade of red that could make a tomato envy. Then once again he diverts his sight back toward the floor, until he hears a feminine voice calls his name, "Hayashi-kun?" Hayashi looks up to see the girl standing in front of him smiling, then somehow stutters out, "Hidem Ai-chan, what are you doing here?" Hitomi, still smiling, answers him, "Oh, Minato-kun told me you wanted to talk to me, so I came over." Shame he had to leave so quickly. He said he was looking for somebody. "So Hayashi-kun, what did you want to talk to me about?" Hayashi at that point had been reduced to a stuttering mass of goop. The only thing he could think coherently was whether next time he saw that blonde boy, would he strangle him, or would he hug him? Trying his best to talk to Hitomi, Hayashi stutters out to her, Well, you see, Hitomi, I wanted to ask if you wanted to. With Jiraiya. He was trying so hard to not laugh as the scene unfolded before him. Maybe Minato took after him more than he thought. The kid just meets somebody randomly in the middle of the street and goes on to play matchmaker, quite successfully if I say so myself. As Jiraiya strokes his chin, he then once again takes out his notepad and begins writing again. As our promising young shinobi continues his way through another town deep in thought, he bumps into a young man, whom clearly is depressed. When consulted on why he is so depressed, the young man explains that he doesn't know how to proclaim his love to a woman he admires greatly. And at that moment our promising young shinobi realizes what is the goal of his travels, and that is to aid in the blossoming of love in young couples and to fan the flames of their youth. For some reason Jiraiya had a feeling of dread wash over him when he wrote down that last part. Shrugging his shoulders, he ignores it. For the sake of following Minato, putting his notepad away, he proceeded to search for Minato to further his research. It took him the whole afternoon to find him, and Jiraiya was already beginning to get worried for Minato's safety. Luckily it was then Jiraiya spotted Minato walking toward one of the side gates, with a fistful of what looked like red hair in his hand. Intrigued, Jiraiya watched as Minato stealthily snuck past the guards and ran into the forest, occasionally picking up a strand of red hair from the floor. Jiraiya thought to himself, what is that boy up to now? I thought he was out looking for his little girlfriend, not walking around picking up red hair. After a good hour of repeating the process of running and picking up hair, Jiraiya realized why Minato was doing it. When he spotted a girl with red hair, who was being dragged along by some Kumonin. Damn, Jiraiya said to himself. Just as we was about to jump in to save the girl, Minato beat him to it. What Jiraiya saw amazed him was the speed of Minato as he dashed through the trees, stealthily taking out one ninja after another, until there were none left. Minato, catching the stumbling girl in his arms bridal style, leaped up and landed on the top of one of the trees. Jiraiya watched the two as he witnessed what would be the most serene moment he had ever seen. His notepad had dropped to the floor forgotten as he watched the two talk, all the while staring into each other's eyes. Her long red hair was flowing as was his blonde ones, while they were both hugged by the green leaves and the howling wind. Jiraiya, reaching down to pick up his notepad, began to scribble down this moment. Our young shinobi, in helping others find love, never would have imagined that he too would find love. Love in the arms of a young traveling maiden much like himself. Their paths crossed under a grove of cherry blossoms. Staring into each other's eyes, they could see into one another's souls. Understanding the yearning and lust they had for the other, they slowly walked toward each other and embraced as the cherry blossom petals fell around them. Jiraiya, hoping to gain some more inspiration, looked up to realize they had left. Swearing inwardly, he leapt off after them, hoping to find them before their night had concluded in order to finish his research. Flashback end. Jiraiya continues to stare at the bodies of Kushina and Minato, then thought to himself, is this how Tsunade felt when Dan died? Wondering out loud, he says, why did you have to sacrifice yourself, Minato? Why couldn't you just let me do it in your place? You ignorant idiot. Flashback. 3 hours ago. At Mount Maiboku, both Jiraiya and Minato were standing on top of Gamabunta's head. Minato is holding his newborn son in his arms as he tells Jiraiya. Jiraiya, during Kushina's birth, a man whom I believe to be Madara Uchiha forcefully ripped the Kyuubi out of her when her seal was weakened. Now the Kyuubi is rampaging toward Konoha, seeking to destroy it. Jiraiya looks at him with concern. How do you plan on stopping the Kyuubi? Minato looks down and strokes the cheek of his son and replies, I've been thinking about it for the past hour, and in the end there is only one plan that can ensure the Kyuubi is not going to be a threat to Konoha anymore. Jiraiya gives him a confused look and asks, what do you have in mind that could stop the Kyuubi? Upon hearing Jiraiya ask this, Minato's face immediately changes to a dejected look, then softly says, I plan on using the Shiki Fujin to seal away part of the Kyuubi inside Naruto. Jiraiya's eyes expand to unheard of proportions, as he stares at Minato like he grew an extra head, then he roars out. You want to do what? Clenching his fists in rage, Jiraiya continues to yell at Minato, do you realize what type of scorn and ridicule they have to live with? You for one should know what it is like growing up with Kushina. Even I noticed some of the nasty looks she got. Minato sighs, then looks up at Jiraiya. You really think I don't know how Jinchurikis are treated? But I believe in the citizens of Konoha. I hope they can see my son as a hero and not as the Kyuubi reincarnated. Jiraiya shakes his head, then says, regardless in your belief in the citizens of Konoha, there still will be those who will make your son's life hell. Minato stares back at his son, then says to Jiraiya, what would you want me to do then? Would I really ask somebody else to do something I wouldn't myself? Would I ever be so cruel as to ask another family to give up their child to this fate? Jiraiya sighs and shakes his head, no you wouldn't. Minato smiles at Jiraiya, exactly, and also, don't you know only Uzumakis and their extremely huge reserves of chakra and life force can hold back the Kyuubi? I have no choice, Jiraiya. Suddenly Jiraiya's hand shoots up and reaches out, and grabs Minato's collar, lifting him off the ground. Reaching up with his other hand, Jiraiya grabs Naruto and takes him from Minato. Minato in shock says, "What are you doing, Jiraiya?" Jiraiya looks at him in the eyes, then says, "You know, son, when you became Hokage I never tested you. But tonight you have passed my test. You proved to me that you are willing to sacrifice everything, including your life, even your family's, for the sake of the village, so as my gift to you I'm going to take your place in doing the ritual." Jiraiya finishes with a smile. Minato, still in shock, tears now starting to pool, sputters out, "Dad, please no." Jiraiya, still smiling, remarks, "You know a father should never have to bury his son. And you know what, Konoha does not deserve somebody like you as a Hokage, but instead, they need somebody like you as Hokage. So son, let me do this like you would say, for the sake of the village." Then Jiraiya looks down at Naruto in his arms. "So what you say, little guy, you ready for your grandpa to stuff a giant fox into your tummy?" Jiraiya lets out a loud laugh. Turning his gaze back to Minato, he says, "I don't say this often, but you have made me proud, son." Minato reaches his arms out to hug Jiraiya and says, "Dad?" Hearing this, Jiraiya allows himself to bring Minato toward him until Minato has his head resting on his chest. But the moment one of Minato's arms wrapped around his back, Jiraiya felt his knees give way and his entire body go limp. What, Jiraiya thought to himself, a seal? In a flash, Minato had taken Naruto back out of Jiraiya's hands and kicks him off Gamabunta's head onto one of the giant leaves. He then stares down at a dumbstruck Jiraiya and yells down to him, "I know you are my father, and how it's bad luck to bury your own son. But right now in this situation I'm not your son." Jiraiya, lying on the leaf unable to move his body, stares up at Minato. Tearing to himself, unable to move, he yelled out in anger, "Damn you, Minato, why are you so thick-head?" Flashback end. Hearing rustling in the forest, Jiraiya turns his head, as he watches the third Hokage Hiruzen Sarutobi and two other shinobi flanking him land near him. Sarutobi immediately approaches the two bodies. When close enough recognize them, he gasps in shock, softly whispering, "Minato Kushina." Jiraiya emotionlessly replied, "They sacrificed their lives so they could complete the ritual that sealed the Kyuubi inside their son." Jiraiya then turns slightly to allow Sarutobi to see Naruto inside the blankets, then shifts the blankets slightly so Sarutobi can see the seal on Naruto's stomach. Sarutobi, without taking his eyes off Naruto, asks Jiraiya, "What is going to happen to him now both of parents are dead?" Jiraiya reaches down and caresses Naruto's cheek, much like how Minato was doing before. "I thought about it long and hard. I could just leave him in Konoha to grow up with a normal life as an orphan. But now I realize I have to not only take care of him for Minato and Kushina's sake, but also for Naruto's. Sensei, you might not know about it, but a life Jinchuriki is quite hard unless you have somebody to care for you." Sarutobi takes out his pipe and lights it before putting it to his lips. Taking a deep breath, he nods and says to Jiraiya, "Yes, I believe you are correct, but I can promise you he can have all of this inside the village. They will look to him as the hero who holds back the Kyuubi every day." Jiraiya shakes his head and chuckles lightly and says, "No, Sensei, they won't see him as a hero. I have traveled around for numerous years and I have seen how villagers treat the other Jinchurikis. They demean them and place all the blame off their losses on them. I will not let my grandson become a punching bag for these people. This is the very least I could do for Minato." Sarutobi ponders for a moment, then nods in approval and asks, "So what are you going to do with him?" Jiraiya looks to Sarutobi and answers him, "Most likely take him to Mount Myaboku. Don't worry about it too much, Sensei. I know you have a lot on your plate with being reinstated as Hokage. All I ask you to do is to take all the money from his parents' account and place it in a savings account, where only you and I can access it. I fear some on your council might attempt to use it for their own gains. As for the Namake's estate, you will not need to worry about it. I'm pretty sure it is safely sealed against all intruders and only one of Namake's blood can open it. Also, if you could, please don't tell anybody he is Minato's son. If they find out Minato's son is alive, they will throw a fit and try to wrench him from me and mold him how they see fit. I cannot allow that to happen." Sarutobi nods his head before letting out a long sigh. "I understand, Jiraiya, and I owe it to them to make sure nobody tarnishes or misuses the property of the Namake's or Uzumaki clans. I wish I could see the boy grow up, though." Sarutobi continues in a sad tone, "I'm sure he would have made a great ninja like his father." Jiraiya sees the sadness in his sensei's eyes and quickly says, "Don't worry, Sensei. Like Minato, I will bring him to Konoha once in a while to visit, and when he's old enough to attend the academy, I will have him live with me in one of my apartments." Hearing this, Sarutobi instantly perks up a little bit and states clearly in a happier tone, "Yes, that idea could work, Jiraiya. Then maybe in time when he grows up, he like his father can take my seat and the damned paperwork that comes along with it." Jiraiya chuckles at what Sarutobi said, then says, "Yes, I imagine he will be a great shinobi one day, for he is the one who must carry on his father's dream and his legacy." He moves his hand to give Naruto a light tap on the nose. "Say, Sensei, don't you have somewhere to go? I'm pretty sure your council is assembled in the chambers, waiting for news from their Hokage about the events that transpired tonight." Like I said, don't worry about us aside from the requests I have asked of you. I will deal with everything else. Sarutobi taking one last glance at Naruto before he looks up at Jiraiya and nods. Yes, they will be waiting for me. All I ask is that you two stay safe and come visit this old man once in a while. Chuckling slightly, Sarutobi vanishes, while his two guards take away the bodies of Minato and Kushina in a swirl of leaves. Another rustle comes from the trees as a toad jumps off one of the branches and lands on Jiraiya's shoulders. Ma says, so this is Minato-kun's tadpole. Jiraiya, without looking over at Ma, answers, yeah, this is his son Naruto. Jiraiya lets out a sigh, then turns to Ma. Kind of like deja vu, isn't it, Ma? 23 years ago I asked you to help me look after a different blonde-haired blue-eyed baby, and now 23 years later I have that same request for you. I hope that you will give me the same answer as last time. Ma lets out a huge grin before saying, why, of course we will look after Minato-kun's tadpole, it would be our pleasure, and also another person to savor in my cooking. What more could I want? Ma lets out a giggle before poofing away in a cloud of smoke. Jiraiya smiles and shakes his head at Ma's antics and says to Naruto, don't worry, I won't leave you, like Tsunade left Minato, grandson. Chapter 5, First Steps Again? If one could describe Naruto's life growing up in Mount Myoboku, it would be normal. Well, as normal as one's life could be growing up not among people but toads. The only exception was Jiraiya, who visited Naruto whenever he was not doing research for Ika of keeping track of his spy network. Aside from that, life was pretty much normal for the toads and the one boy living in Mount Myoboku. Ma often commented that raising Naruto was much like raising Minato. The only real difference between them was that Naruto had a bottomless pit for a stomach. Unlike Minato, who was actually quite hesitant to eat some of Ma's dishes, Naruto devoured them all regardless of what they were. Aside from their eating habits, they were pretty much identical, especially when it came to learning. Both of her boys, as Ma called them, were like sponges when presented with new information. The moment Naruto could form coherent sentences, life was just one big blob of rapid-fire sentences to the toads in Mount Myoboku. Rumor has it that Minato was the reason that Gamabunta the toad boss drank so much due to his love for asking questions, and now that Naruto was also doing the same, Gamabunta just took to drinking more and more. Others would just chalk it up as an addiction. Another part of Naruto that reminded the toads of Minato was his love for running around. It often took multiple toads to follow Naruto around with his insane amount of stamina just to keep track of him and prevent him from getting injured. Seeing how much Naruto was like Minato, many toads saw this as an opportunity to rectify any mistakes they had made with raising Minato. Now, although to most it might seem that Minato had grown up perfectly normal and intact, there were certain incidents that still gave Ma nightmares up to the day Minato had died. One prime example had been when Minato had almost fallen into the pool of scared oil one day when he had been exploring. Had it not been for Gamabunta passing by and catching Minato with his tongue, the consequences would have been extremely dire for him. Luckily for Ma, the worst Naruto had done up till now was when he had vanished for an entire afternoon. Only when Ma had become extremely frantic did some toads build up the courage to go look and poke around inside the scared oil pool, and to their eternal relief found nothing inside. It was then that Pa had recommended that they visit the Great Toad Sage in hopes that he would find Naruto with his crystal ball. Upon reaching inside the chamber of the Great Toad Sage, to all of the toads' surprise, they discovered Naruto had been here the whole day, sitting on the edge of the Great Toad Sage's platform, and when questioned on what he was doing by Ma, Naruto answered Ma that he was just asking the Great Toad Sage questions. Life around Mount Myoboku continued like this on a daily basis. Naruto would wake up, eat, and proceed to run around asking the inhabitants questions about anything that came to mind, then go back home, eat some more, and sleep. And as much as Ma loved Naruto and his eternal curiosity, she too was beginning to grow weary of Naruto's barrage of questions, so she took it upon herself, and for the sake of the sanity of all the other toads, to teach Naruto the art of meditation. Explaining to Naruto that if he just meditated on a question for a bit, he would often find the answer himself without the need to ask it. At first, many toads were shocked when Naruto had suddenly stopped running around and pestering them. Fearing for his safety and health, they went looking for him, and when they found him, he usually was sitting somewhere in a meditative pose with animals of all sorts climbing all over him. Seeing this, it shocked some toads who had never seen the boy so calm and relaxed, but to others they were extremely proud, for it might not have been enough to obtain sage mode, but many saw that the potential was there. Many concluded that all these questions Naruto asked was to feed his lust for knowledge, and it only grew when he had learned to read at the age of 3. Seeing him learn to read at such a young age, Shima dubbed him like she dubbed Minato her little genius. After he learned to read, he would often be found spending his time in Jiraiya's room reading stories about a man who could grow and form trees instantly from basically anywhere and use them to defeat a giant demon fox. Or a man who was so fast he could wipe out an entire division of enemy troops in a blink of an eye, and then there were stories about a clan whose people could live for hundreds of years. To Naruto's delights, none of these were fairy tales or just rumors, they were actual history. But learning to read would also come with consequences, especially when to Ma's eternal shame Naruto found a copy of Jiraiya's Ica Ica Paradise. And it would be understatement if you said Ma dreaded teaching Naruto about the anatomy of a human female. Well, the lashing she would give Jiraiya when he returned later tonight to pick Naruto up, it would make the beatings he got from Tsunade when he was younger look tame. But she knew she couldn't beat him too badly. Jiraiya still had to bring Naruto to Konoha for his first visit since his birth. But sadly luck would not be on Ma's side tonight when it came time for Jiraiya to come pick up Naruto. It wasn't him that showed up in her home, but it was Enma the Monkey King and the third Hokage's personal summon instead. It wasn't all that unusual for other summons to show up in Mount Maiboku, but for a boss summon to show up for anything other than in political reason that was a shocker for all the toads. Ma suspected it was just the Sandaime keeping tabs on Naruto. Still, she wouldn't let her guard down. Acting on her motherly instinct, she immediately questioned the Monkey King's motives. "Now Enma-kun, why are you here and where is Jiraiya-chan?" asked Ma, even though she almost knew for sure why Enma was here, where Jiraiya was not so much. Not many knew where he was half the time. Enma smiled at Ma, knowing how protective she could get when it regarded children in her care regardless if they were hers or not, then said, "Shima-sama, I was sent here by the Sandaime in Jiraiya's place, whom is currently unable to escort Naruto-kun to Konoha. So I will in his place as by order of the Sandaime." Seeing that Ma was still glaring at him, Enma quickly added on, "Do not worry, Shima-sama, I will look after Naruto-kun as if he was my very own. I will also ensure no danger would befall him." Hearing this, Ma allowed her expression to soften a little, then asked Enma, "After you have escorted him to Konoha, who will watch him afterwards?" "I'm not sure if you were told, but he will be staying there for at least a week." Scratching his chin a bit, Enma answered, "To be honest, Shima-sama, I am not sure who will officially look after him." Watching Ma's face harden once again, Enma quickly continued on, not wanting to inflict her wrath. "But if it will make you feel better, I will personally request Sarutobi to enlist the best possible candidates to look after him." Seeing Ma's face unchanging, Enma didn't know why he felt like the need to promise her. "And if I deem this person unsatisfactory, I personally will watch over him." Ma, feeling that his answer was satisfactory, handed Enma a cup of tea to his eternal relief, also letting out a breath he had long been holding. Nursing her own cup of tea, Ma then said in a more serious tone, "Do you know why, aside from seeing him as one of my sons, why I got to such lengths to protect him?" Enma shakes his head, quickly wanting to hear what could bring her obsession to protect Naruto to these levels. Ma slowly says, "I'm not sure if you are aware of this, but Naruto is the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki." Enma, slowly starting to understand why Ma is so protective, nods his head as Ma continues explain to him. "Also, I'm not sure if you've heard the stories about how other Jinchurikis are treated, but just hearing them makes my blood boil. I'm not sure what I would do if somebody ever hurt my son like that." Enma stares down at the cup of tea he was given and says to Ma, "I have heard rumors about it from some of the other summons, but I never wanted to believe them. But now that you tell me, I guess I have no choice." Now in a dejected tone, Enma continues, "And although it pains me to say this, but I know there are going to be some people in Konoha that would want to hurt the child, if they knew what he contained inside him." Ma then says to him, "This is why I go to such great lengths to ensure the proper people protect Naruto, at least until he is old enough to understand and protect himself." Enma smiles at Ma then states, "Yes, Shima-sama, I understand, but I would like to say that even though there are those who would want to hurt Naruto, there are also those who would see him for what he truly is and would love and care for him. One prime example would be my good friend Sarutobi. Although he has never seen or met the boy, the truly man cares for him greatly, this being one of the main reasons I am here today." Ma returns Enma's smile with a grin and a giggle and says, "Yes, it would appear so. Maybe that would explain the numerous sightings of monkeys hanging around Mount Maiboku as of late?" Enma chuckles, then rubs the back of his head and replies, "Ah yes, that would be Sarutobi's doing. As you know, there are times when Jiraiya is pulled away on long missions, so Sarutobi sends some of the monkeys from my realm to watch over Naruto and give him reports on how he is doing when Jiraiya cannot." Ma laughing remarks, "Well, it's a good thing we never tried to catch any of them then, since they never meant any harm." Suddenly Ma's expression changes into a stern one and states while staring directly at Enma, "Regardless, next time I recommend you have them notify us of their presence in Mount Maiboku, or one might just have an accident near the sacred oil pool." Enma, suddenly feeling extremely nervous seeing the old toad sage change expression so fast, feeling the sweat start to run down his forehead, he feels the need to quickly change the topic. "Ah yes, I will remember to inform Sarutobi of that. Now, Shima-sama, if you would call Naruto, we must be leaving soon." Ma's expression once again changes instantly to a more relaxed one and turns her head before yelling slightly to the other room, "Pa, could you please get Naruto and ensure he's packed and bring him here?" Turning back toward Enma, she says with a smile, "You're lucky we were expecting somebody to pick him up, or you would have to go out and find him yourself. Most of the time Naruto goes where he pleases." Upon hearing this, Enma begins to wonder, "Naruto, just how much trouble am I going to have if I have to look after you?" Almost regretting the promise he made Ma to look after him. Thinking inwardly, I am really hoping that you find somebody satisfactory to look after him, Sarutobi, or this is going to be a long week. After about a minute of waiting for Naruto, he walked into the room with Pa by his side. The boy had sandy blonde hair and was slightly shorter than 4 feet, which was taller than most average 4-year-olds. Enma suspected it had something to do with Ma's choice of culinary dishes. He wore a white t-shirt that had long blue sleeves, black cargo pants, and a drawstring bag slung over one shoulder, inside most likely a change of clothes and basic necessities. Staring at the monkey summon, Naruto says, "Oh, you're not Grandpa, Jiraiya. I'm guessing he's too busy to come again." Naruto finished slightly crestfallen. Pa looks over at the saddened Naruto and sternly says, Now, Naruto, what did me and Ma teach you about manners when meeting new people?" Almost instantly Naruto's expression changed to a smile, and he holds out his hand. "Hi, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. Pleasure to meet you." Enma, slightly taken back by his instant expression change, thinks to himself, must be something Ma taught him. After that, Enma reaches out to grab Naruto's hand and shakes it and replies, "My name is Enma, king of the monkey summons. And don't look so sad, Naruto. The third Hokage sent me in Jiraiya's place to bring you to Konoha." Seeing a look of happiness come over the young boy's face, Enma feels his heart warm up. Then he asks Naruto, "So are you ready to go back to Konoha and meet the third Hokage? From what I hear, he can't wait to meet you." A smiling Naruto replies, "Really, you're going to bring me to Konoha? Thank you, Enma-sama." Naruto then places his hand on his chin with one finger, taping it lightly in a thinking pose, and says, "Third Hokage, that's the one they call the Sandaime, correct?" Enma nods his head and Naruto continues on. "So you're telling me Hiruzen Sarutobi, the god of shinobi and the student of the first and second Hokage, wants to meet me?" Naruto's eyes wide with glee. Enma, continuing to nod his head, tells Naruto, "Yes, that is correct, and for a little boy you sure know quite a lot about my friend the Sandaime." Naruto, giving Enma a toothy grin, answer him, "Well, yeah, I read a book about him in Grandpa's library. Is it true that he was my grandpa's sensei?" Enma, smiling at the boy, responds, "If your grandpa is Jiraiya, then yes, the Sandaime was his sensei. I personally remember helping train the boy when he was younger." Naruto was about to ask another question, but Enma cut him off by raising his hand and saying, "Now, Naruto, that's enough questions for now." Seeing the boy let out a pout, Enma chuckled before he continued, "It's not that I don't want to answer your questions, but I have to point out that we have to hurry to Konoha and meet the Sandaime before he retires for the night." Then bending over and whispering into the boy's ear, "And when you get to see him yourself, you can ask him all the questions you want." Straightening back up, Enma could almost see the gears in Naruto's head spinning and concocting of questions to ask Sarutobi. Inwardly he says to himself with a snicker, "Have fun, Sarutobi." Enma then turns to Pa and gives him a nod. With that, Pa walks out and heads toward the distant body water portal. Ma walks up to Naruto and gives him a hug before saying, "I'll see you in a week, okay, my little Naruto-kun, I'm going to miss you so much." Naruto hugging Ma back with a smile and says, "Not as much as I'm going to miss you and your amazing cooking, Ma." Ma giggles, then ruffles Naruto's hair a little bit, which was getting more and more difficult seeing he was getting taller, then says to him, "You always know what to say to make me feel happy, and don't you worry, I will have plenty of my cooking waiting for you when you come back. Just as long as you stay safe and come back in one piece, okay?" Ma finishes in a serious tone. Naruto nods and smiles, and in a poof of smoke he was gone along with Enma. Ma then says to herself, Speaking of cooking, might as well make Pa something to eat when he gets back from Konoha." With that, Ma heads off into the kitchen to prepare food for Pa when he returns. In a forest outside of one of Konoha's side gates, white smoke emerges from the ground and 3 figures are left standing where the smoke had been when it clears. Pa looks over at Enma and says, "I summoned us a bit outside of Konoha as instructed by Jiraiya. He said it isn't smart to summon somebody inside Konoha in the middle of the night. Something about how we would get swarmed by the police or possibly get in trouble with Yumbu." Enma had a look that showed he wasn't paying attention to what Pa had said. Then without any notice he jumped up to a tree and kicked something in the tree to the ground. By the sound of the grunt the man had let out when he was kicked, Naruto was sure it was a man. Naruto watched as Enma picked up the man and slammed him into a tree and said with a growl, "Now what are you doing out here in the middle of the night?" Chapter 6, Pale Eyes. Seeing that the man was refusing to answer him, Enma tightens his grip on the man's neck, then growled out, "Tell me, Kumo, why are you out here in the middle of the night?" Seeing the ninja was not going to answer him, he slams him into the tree one more time, then knocks him out with a chop to the neck. Turning around to Enma's shock, he sees Naruto attempting to untie a knot that held a brown burlap sack closed. Red lights suddenly going off in Enma's head, realizing that if Naruto got hurt, Ma would skin him alive. Immediately Enma yells to him, "Naruto, what are you doing? Get away from that, it might be dangerous." Naruto, without stopping his attempts to untie the bag, says to Enma, "Enma-sama, I saw this bag fall when you kicked that man, and when I approached it I saw it was shaking and I heard whimpering from it." Seeing that the boy had good intentions, Enma was still worried that it might be a trap. Quickly moving his way toward Naruto with the Kumonin slung over his shoulder, he says in a worried tone. Regardless, Naruto, this could be a trap set by this Ma. Before he could finish, Enma is cut off by a scared voice coming from the bag. Please sniff sniff, is somebody out there? Please help me sniff sniff. Naruto, getting infuriated with the knot and by the sounds of the person inside the bag crying, takes out a kunai given to him by Pa and cuts the knot off carefully. Opening the bag to reveal who it is, Enma's eyes widen in shock when he sees a young girl around Naruto's age with short dark blue hair, pale eyes, and in a light purple kimono, which by the tear stains running down her face was clear proof that she had been crying for a while. The moment she was free, she launched herself and latched onto Naruto. Instantly she began crying again into Naruto's chest. All Naruto could make out was her saying, "Thank you, thank you, thank you," between her sobs. Naruto, only knowing one way to soothe the poor girl, placed his arms around her in a hug, while gently whispering soft words of comfort into her ear. Enma, on the other hand, was seething with rage. Clenching his fists in anger, he mutters out to himself, "A child. She's just a child. And by the look of her eyes, a Hyuga no less." Dropping the Kumonin to the floor unceremoniously, he picks up Naruto's forgotten kunai, readying himself to kill the man. Pa, seeing the rage in Enma's eyes, quickly hops onto his shoulders and says to him, "Calm down, Enma. Clearly this man is here in Konoha for reasons other than kidnapping the girl." Enma, in too much rage to see the reasoning behind Pa's words, snarls at him. "What in the world are you talking about, Pa? He attempted to kidnap this girl." Pointing toward the still sobbing girl, then continuing, "And for what? Most likely to bring Takumo to be a breeder so they can use her abilities," all but spitting out the last line. Pa, realizing that he doesn't have much time, before Enma further loses himself to his rage, quickly states, "I understand if he was just a spy, then you have every right to kill him, but do you really think Konoha's security is so lax that they allow a Kumonin to parade through the city, walk through the Hyuga compound, and somehow kidnap a girl, then escape? If my memory is correct, then she is also a main branch Hyuga, judging by her unmarked forehead. To kidnap one of them is no easy feat." Seeing Enma visibly calm down, Pa eases a little before continuing, "I'm going on a limb and take a guess that this man is possibly a diplomat of some sorts, or that is what he wants us to believe at the very least, and if you kill him, then you would definitely cause all sorts of international issues for the Hokage." Growling, Enma says, "So they have him pose under the guise as a diplomat, thus granting him immunity. And more than likely if he was killed, then Kumo would deny everything, and possibly would even attempt to gain some sort of compensation for his death. That is low even for Kumo standards." Grinning, Slight Pa says to Enma, "But now we have the upper hand with him alive and captured. You could then have that clan in your village, the Yamanakas, I believe," read into his mind to discover who gave him the orders to perform the kidnapping. Enma lets out a sadistic smirk that says malevolently, "Heh, I think sending him straight to the Yamanakas is too easy for him. I would think sending him off to Ibiki first would be more suitable, don't you think, Pa?" Scratching his chin slightly, Pa answers, "If Ibiki is that boy whom has those special skills to make others sing, then sure, why not? He most definitely deserves it." Pa finished with a grin. Hearing the knocked out man mumble a little, Enma says, "Pa, maybe you should get back to Mount Maiboka, Pa. Ma is most likely wondering what's taking you so long. Also, I should bring our prisoner back to Konoha and get the girl back to her family. No doubt they are turning Konoha inside out searching for her." Pa, then giving Enma a quick nod and disappears in a puff of smoke. Enma then turns to the two children, the girl seemingly asleep in Naruto's arms. Seeing no point in waking her after that traumatic incident, Enma says to Naruto in a quiet voice, "Naruto, we should get going back to Konoha. Do you mind carrying her since she is in shape to sew herself, seeing I have to carry this trash over here?" Pointing toward the unconscious Kumonin on the floor. Naruto nods, then watches as Enma lifts up the Kumonin and slings him once again over his shoulder, then beginning their short journey toward one of the side gates in Konoha, with Naruto carrying the Hyuga girl bridal style behind Enma. Upon approaching the gate, Enma could see the Hokage standing at the gate waiting for them. Enma assumed that the Hokage had gotten worried when they didn't show up on time. But he was surprised when the Hokage made a hand signal towards them, and two Anbu immediately appeared, and approached Enma, taking the Kumonin from him. By the time Enma had reached the Hokage had noticed the confused look on Enma's face and said, "I'm glad you listened to Pa when he told you not to kill the Kumonin." Enma suddenly realized that Sarutobi must have been watching through his crystal ball, retorted, "Well, Sarutobi, if you were watching this whole time, you could have sent some help, you know." Sarutobi gave him a mischievous smile, then answered, "I trust in your ability to make the proper decision. At least I trust Pa's ability at the very least." Then he turned his head to look at Naruto and the girl in his arms, quirking his head a little. Sarutobi remarked, "And that must be the missing Hyuga in your arms, isn't it, Naruto-kun?" Naruto, recognizing the Hokage's hat and robes from the pictures he had seen, tilts his head slightly in a show of respect, knowing he couldn't bow with the girl in his arms. "Yes, Hokage-sama, I discovered her in a burlap bag after Enma-sama had incapacitated the man that was responsible for kidnapping her." Smiling, the Hokage says to him a joyful tone, "Ah, Naruto-kun, no need to be so formal with me, you could just call me Hokage Gigi, or just Gigi for short if you please." Cocking his head a bit, Naruto asks in a confused tone, "Gigi? As in grandpa, but you are not my grandpa, and even if you were, you are the Hokage, the strongest ninja in the entire Konoha. I am required to show you my respect." Still smiling, Sarutobi answers him, "Well, it is true that you aren't my grandson, but from what Jiraiya tells me you call him grandpa, and he isn't your real grandpa either, so why don't you just humor this old man and cut the formalities?" Naruto is slightly taken back by the Hokage's easygoing attitude, nods his head and says, "Understood, Hokage-sam, I mean Hokage Gigi, but I have a question. Do you allow all your subordinates to show you such disrespect?" Chuckling a bit, Sarutobi shakes his head. "No, Naruto-kun, not all of them, just the ones I hold close to my heart. But I think we have more urgent matters at hand, more specifically in your hands." He points to the sleeping Hyuga girl in Naruto's hands and continues saying, "I really think you should bring her back home, before her father or mother goes mad. We can continue our discussion later if you like, but for now I have to deal with our guest." Then Sarutobi turns his head back toward Enma and says, "And I trust that, Enma, you will watch over the boy till then?" Seeing Enma nod his head, Sarutobi gives Naruto once more a small smile, then turns and leaves towards the Hokage tower. Enma, turning to Naruto, motions him toward the main street and says, "Let's go, Naruto, I'll show you the way toward the Hyuga compound." 5 minutes later. In front of the Hyuga compound gates, with the Hyuga matriarch Hitomi Hyuga guarded by 2 branch member guards. She is pacing back and forth deep in thought, hoping for news of her missing daughter. When she is broken out of her musings by another Hyuga landing near her, she immediately questions him in a stern tone. "Ko, is there any news on Hinata's whereabouts?" Ko, on one knee bowing to Hitomi, responds, "I'm sorry, Hitomi-sama, I have checked all of Hinata-sama's favorite places, including the pond near the park and the bakery where she buys her cinnamon buns from. But I could find no sign of her anywhere." Hitomi shakes her head, wanting to desperately cry for her lost daughter, but she knows she has to stand firm to uphold the clan's honor. She then tells Ko, "Thank you, Ko, for all your help. Why don't you go back inside to take a break? You have been searching for the whole night." Ko immediately bows on both his knees and places his forehead on the ground and says, "Please, Hitomi-sama, allow me to keep searching. As Hinata-sama's assigned protector, it would be to my eternal shame if I were to stop looking before she is found." Hitomi walks over and crouches down to place a hand on Ko's shoulder, knowing how much Ko cared for Hinata, then says to him, "She wouldn't want to see you like this, Ko. Please just listen to me and go back inside, you look worn out." Before Ko go respond to Hitomi, a rabbit-masked Anbu lands beside her and states, "Hyuga-sama, they found her." Hitomi leaps up toward the Anbu, grabbing her by the shoulders, and asks, "Hitori, please tell me where, and who?" The rabbit-masked Anbu takes a step back, then says, "Please, Hitomi-sama." Then taps her mask with her finger a few times. Hitomi, seeing her mistake, blushes, realizing the names of the Anbu members are supposed to be confidential. Composing herself, she asks again, this time in a more professional tone, "My apologies, Rabbit-san, you are to inform me that you have located my daughter?" Giggling slightly behind her mask, the Anbu answers her, "Yes, Hyuga-sama, the Hokage has notified us that Enma-sama has located your daughter, and is now escorting her back to the compound." Hitomi tilts her head to the side slightly with a confused look. "Enma-sama, as in the Sandame's personal summon Enma?" The Anbu nods, then say, "Correct, Enma-sama was able to rescue Hinata-sama due to the circumstance of being in the right place at the right time. It so happened that Enma-sama was on business out in that area of Konoha tonight, and it was either bad luck or fate that he ran across the man who kidnapped Hinata-sama." Hitomi lets out a sigh of relief while smiling for the first time since Hinata went missing, turning to Ko, she ordered, "Ko, since you were so ecstatic about continuing to searching for Hinata, would you please go and find my husband to informing him that our daughter has been found and she is being escorted home now?" Ko stood up, wiping the tears from his eyes, then said, "Yes, Hitomi-sama, I will go immediately." With renewed vigor, Ko leapt off into the night searching for the Hyuga clan head. After a few more minutes of waiting, Hitomi was able to spot 2 figures walking from down the street toward them. Turning on her Byakugan, Hitomi instantly turned into full mother mode, dashing down the street toward the 2 figures, worried about her daughter's health due to the fact she was being carried home, instead of being on her own 2 feet. Before she was able to reach them, Enma stepped in front of her, quickly shifting into a battle stance, then he stated, "I'm sorry, Ninja-san, but it has been a long night, and I cannot risk the child's safety, as per Hokage's orders. So please state your business with these 2. Hitomi instantly deactivated her Byakugan and took a few steps back, to show she meant no harm, then she stated loudly and clearly to the Monkey King, "Enma-sama, I am Hitomi Hyuga, matriarch of the Hyuga clan, and the girl currently in that boy's arms is my daughter Hinata." Enma shifted out of his fighting stance, but still kept his guard up just in case he was being deceived. "Be that as it may, I rather we officially make it to the Hyuga compound before I hand the girl over, you should understand my concerns. Hitomi nods her head, then steps aside to allow Enma and the boy to continue toward the compound. By the time they reached the compound, they noticed the crowd by the gate had grew to include Hayashi and his brother Hisashi. Hayashi, seeing Hinata in the boy's arms, squints his eyes and says to Hitomi, "Hitomi, what is the meaning of this?" making a hand motion toward where Hinata was. Hitomi shrugs her shoulders at him and responds, "I don't know, but Enma-sama said he would explain when he reached the gates." Turning, she smiles at Enma, hoping he would explain what happened. Suddenly another voice comes from the shadows, "There's no need for Enma to explain, I can provide all the answers." The figure stepped into the lighting, showing it was the Sandaime again. Causing all the Hyugas in the vicinity to bow toward the man, after the Hokage waved them off, Hayashi stepped forward to ask the Hokage, "Hokage-sama, judging by the fact that you are here, then the kidnapper has been subdued and is currently under interrogation." The Hokage takes out his pipe and lights it before answering Hayashi. "The moment the man awoke, he pleaded to me that all he was doing was taking a quiet stroll through the forests of Konoha when he was attacked by Enma here, even though he had no ill intentions toward him." Hearing this, Hisashi lets out a loud audible gasp and comments, "What is this nonsense? Surely you do not believe him, Hokage-sama?" Chuckling slightly, the Hokage shook his head and replied, Now, Hisashi, I might be old, but I'm not senile yet. There's no need to fret, I've already had a Yamanaka share his memories with me, so we have all the proof we need to win against them if Kumo decides to press charges." Taking a puff of his pipe, Sarutobi watches as the Hyugas slowly start to visibly relax. Taking the pipe out of his mouth, he says to Hayashi, "If you want a full report of everything that transpired tonight, you can come request one from me tomorrow morning. Now I understand it's been a long night for everybody, but shouldn't you deal with the matter at hand?" Hayashi responded to the Hokage with a half-confused, half-stoic face. "What do you mean, Hokage-sama?" Sarutobi points to Naruto, then says, "I do believe that young Naruto Uzumaki has something that belongs to you, and I'm sure he is quite tired from carrying it for you all night." Both the Hyuga brothers were shocked when they heard the boy's name, and Hitomi just blushed lightly, then walked over to Naruto and attempted to take Hinata from his arms, which was easier said than done. While Hinata was sleeping, she had grabbed a fistful of Naruto's shirt, and now prying her off of him was out of the option. Every time Hitomi attempted to pry one of her hands off Naruto, Hinata unconsciously launched a deadly Juken strike in her direction, the first time she attempted it. Hinata had nearly gouged her eyes out, and only because of years of battle experience did Hitomi barely dodge it. Deciding to give up for her safety and well-being, Hitomi smiled down at Naruto and said, "Well, Naruto-kun, it seems like she doesn't want to let you go. So it would seem you two will need to share a bed tonight, doesn't it?" Naruto, blushing slightly at the idea of sleeping in the same bed as Hinata, replied, "I don't mind sleeping in the same bed as somebody. As long as you don't mind that, Hyuga-sama." Turning his head over toward the Hyuga clan head Hayashi, looking for his response. Seeing an opportunity to deal with an issue of who was going to watch over Naruto, Sarutobi immediately agreed for Hayashi. "I'm sure the Hyuga clan would love that, wouldn't they, Hayashi?" Hayashi, breaking out of his thoughts, replied, "What, look after him, sure we have plenty of rooms." While trying to regain his composure, Sarutobi gave Hayashi a grin, then said, "Perfect then, Naruto-kun will stay with the Hyuga clan till he is scheduled to return to Mount Myaboku in a week. While he is staying with you, I will send over the funds that I was going to provide for him to acquired lodgings. If nobody has any problems with that, then I will take my leave." Taking a quick scan over the three Hyugas, Sarutobi noticed that both Hayashi and Hisashi were deep in thought, while Hitomi was smiling at the sight of Hinata in Naruto's arms. Sensing no disagreement from them, he turned and began his trek back to the Hokage Tower, once again signaling Enma to come along. Noticing the Hokage was gone and her husband and his brother still in a state of shock, she shook her head at them. She motioned Naruto into the compound. After they were gone, Hayashi and Hisashi turned to each other, then together they said in unison, "Uzumaki?" Hisashi then said, "Could he really be their son?" Hayashi responding, "I don't know for sure, but the resemblance between those two is uncanny." Then a grin of realization broke over Hisashi's normally stoic face. "You know, if your daughter plays her cards right and if he really is who we think he is, then I believe fate is about to shine very brightly on the Hyuga clan." Hayashi returns Hisashi's grin with a light smirk. "Yes it is, brother, yes it is." Hayashi turning, he heads back inside the compound, cackling inwardly the whole way. Inside Hinata's room, Hitomi leads Naruto over to Hinata's bed and sits down, patting a spot next to her. She motions him to have a seat. Rather reluctantly, Naruto sits down next to her, still nervous about being in Hinata's room without her permission. Looking over at the Hitomi, Naruto notices a few tears rolling down her cheeks. Confused, Naruto asks, "Lady Hyuga, is there something wrong? Why are you crying?" Hitomi shakes her head, then wipes the tears away. "No, there's nothing wrong, Naruto-kun. It's just you remind me of somebody I used to know." Naruto looks into her eyes, then asks, "My father?" Hitomi gasps and immediately covers her mouth with her hand. "You know?" Naruto chuckles a bit, then looks away from her and says, "You would have to be blind not to notice the resemblance. I found out one day when I was going through books in my grandpa's room. There was a picture of him being used as a page marker for one of his books on ceiling." Hitomi leans over and hugs him, whispering into Naruto's ear. "We all miss him so much. He meant and did so much for us when we were younger. And when he died, my husband changed, he became so distant, but now you're here, maybe you can change him back." Sitting back up, she ruffles Naruto's hair lightly. Suddenly a knock is heard from the other side of the door, then a voice asks, "Hitomi-sama, are you in there?" Hitomi stands up and strides over to the door and opens it, revealing a young Hyuga female with a cup of tea on a tray in her hands. The female Hyuga bows slightly. "Hitomi-sama, I bought you your tea for tonight." Smiling, Hitomi takes the tray from her hand, thanks her, and closes the door, then walks back over to Naruto. Placing the tray on top of a nightstand, Hitomi picks up the cup of tea and hands it to Naruto. "I haven't officially thanked you for saving my daughter yet, have I, Naruto-kun?" Naruto takes the cup of tea and stares at it, then back up at Hitomi, and says sarcastically with a grin, "One of the richest clans in the entirety of Konoha, and all I get for saving their precious daughter is a cup of tea." He laughs, then continues, "You're very lucky I'm not a materialistic person, Lady Hyuga, but all in all this cup of tea will suffice." Naruto, taking a quick sip of tea, exclaims, "Oh my! Forget what I said, Lady Hyuga, this tea is absolutely marvelous. I do believe this is a fine compensation for your daughter's return." Hitomi giggles at the show Naruto is putting on. Once again leaning over, she ruffles his hair and says, "A prankster just like your father." Standing back up, she turns and leaves the room. Before closing the door, she pokes her head in and says, "You two behave tonight. As much as I enjoy your company, Naruto-kun, I would not appreciate having grandchildren this early." Giggling once more at Naruto's blush, she wishes him a good night and closes the door. Chapter 7, Visiting Hours. Drip. 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 Looking around the darkness, Naruto wonders out loud, "Where am I?" Upon asking that question, torches all around him light up, revealing to Naruto a dimly lit tunnel. Standing up, he realized he was kneeling on water, because there was a good foot of it between him and the ground. Naruto wondered to himself, "That's weird, I didn't know I could walk on water." Already shrugging, he followed the torches down till he was met with a giant gate with golden bars running from the ceiling all the way to the floor. In the middle, where the keyhole was supposed to be, there was a piece of paper instead. A seal? Naruto thought. Walking closer to examine the seal, Naruto failed to realize a giant pair of red eyes opening and peering at him through the darkness, until finally a deep rumbling voice said, "So this is my mighty warden." Shocked by the sudden voice, Naruto jumped back and landed on his backside, staring in fear at the giant pair of eyes from the darkness. He stutters out, Who are you?" "Oh, you don't know, do you?" Naruto heard a clap, then suddenly in a blaze of fire all the torches inside the cage lit up, revealing a giant orange fox with 9 flowing tails. Naruto whispered to himself, "Kyuubi. Well, at least I know my container is at least intelligent enough to know who I am." He finished with a smirk. Naruto unconsciously places his hand on his stomach, then asked, "How?" The Kyuubi lets out a cackle, then says, "Don't worry, kid, I'm not free. Your damn father was a genius when it came to seals, even I have to admit that." Looking up, Naruto gave the giant fox a confused look. "Where am I then, if you're not free?" The Kyuubi gives him a loud snort. "This is your mindscape, boy, and at the moment this is the only way for us to communicate. Though that problem can be easily rectified," he finishes with a giant foxy grin. Hearing this, Naruto is more confused as ever. "I don't get it, what caused me to enter into my mindscape?" Well, to put it simply, kid, you're dying. Somebody out there was trying to kill you." Now Naruto was bewildered more than ever. Somebody tried to kill me? He thought to himself. No, that's impossible. The Hyugas would never hurt me, they were so nice, especially Lady Hitomi. Scratching his chin, Kyuubi retorts. Well, you humans can be quite devious, though nothing compared to us foxes. Deny it as you may, I'm just telling you the truth. Somebody tried to kill you, and because of that I was awakened from my slumber. He grows slightly. Probably something that damned Yondaime put into the seal. Naruto tilted his head downward, greatly saddened by the prospect of dying so young. There was so much he wanted to do. Tilting his head back up at the Kyuubi, a few tears speckled across his face. Well, at least before I died, I got to meet you, Kyuubi. You seem nicer than what all of the books say about you. Then he giving the Kyuubi a light smile. The Kyuubi inched closer to the bars, his nose nearly pressed up against it. He was greatly intrigued by the child, and though he would never admit it, he was somewhat impressed by the kid's demeanor even in the face of death. You really think I would let my container die just like that, kid? I would be the laughing stock of all the demons. Even then, I'm not sure if your little books told you this, but if you die, I pretty much die as well. Even though I would revive in a couple of decades, dying still hurts. Naruto wiped a few tears in his eyes and chuckled a bit. Though he didn't show it, he was ecstatic that he wasn't going to die. Walking up to the bars of the cage, he placed his hand on one of the bars and said, Thank you, Kyubi. The Kyubi stared at him with a bemused look. What are you thanking me for, boy? Smiling, Naruto responded, though I'm not 100% sure, I believe that in some way you helped save me from whatever was killing me. And in my books you are a pretty swell guy, I mean Fox, and I even consider you as one of my friends now, that's if you want to be my friend. Kyubi looked into Naruto's eye, seeing there was no hint of deception or trickery, laughed out loud. I in all my years have never met somebody like you, kid, you know what? Being sealed inside you might actually be bearable. Now let's talk about this supposed attempt for murder on your person. From what I was able to see, you ingested some sort of slow-acting poison that was supposed to slowly and discreetly shut down your immune system. But it reacted badly when it came in contact with my chakra, and the poison quickly aggravated, went into attack mode and tried to kill you. Thinking about it for a bit, Naruto realized where he must have ingested that poison from. The cup of tea Lady Hyuga gave me. But she wouldn't poison me, would she? The Kyubi grunted. Like I said before, you humans can be pretty deceitful. She probably put on that friendly and kind mask to trick you into drinking that cup of poison tea. Naruto shaking his head in disbelief. No, it couldn't have been Lady Hyuga. I was watching her the whole time. She never had the chance to put the poison in the tea. Regardless, that cup of tea was never meant for me in the first place, it was meant for Gasp. The Kyubi howled with laughter. You humans are even more underhanded than I thought. A worried look came over Naruto's face. That means somebody has been trying to kill Lady Hyuga. Kyubi, as much as I'd enjoy conversing with you more, I have to get out of here and warn Lady Hyuga. Kyubi lets out a loud audible sigh. Just when I was just starting to get entertained. Well, at least after you saved the pretty little Hyuga girl's mom, you could ask her for her favor, if you know what I mean. Finishing with a snicker. Naruto's sweat dropped and asked, do you by chance know my grandpa Jiraiya? The Kyubi lets out a loud bark of laughter, then remarks, oh please boy, if I wanted to I could make that man look like a novice. Enough about me and your grandpa's tendencies, you have your mate's mom to save, just come back and occasionally visit afterwards. Puffing up his cheeks, Kyubi blew out, creating a gust of wind, instantly extinguishing all the torches and sending Naruto spiraling into the darkness. Awakening, Naruto immediately tried to open his eyes, but he felt a wave of weakness wash over him. This was accompanied by a nauseating headache. His attempts to raise his hands to rub his aching head failed, as his arms felt like they were made of lead. It would take Naruto at least another 30 seconds before he could even squint his eyes slightly, and another minute before he could move his arm. Raising his arm up to his head, he felt something wet on his forehead. What the? Naruto weakly mumbled out, moving the wet towel off his forehead. Instantly hearing a rush of movement, Naruto saw Hayashi's face a few feet away from his. Uzumaki-san, are you okay? Hayashi said in a concerned voice. Hyuga-sama, you do not have to worry about me. I have more concerning news to tell you, Naruto strained out. Uzumaki-san, forget this foolishness. Currently your health is in a very critical state. We have sent for medics already. Hayashi said in a strict tone. Please, Hyuga-sama, at least hear me out. This concerns Lady Hyuga. Naruto pleaded. Hayashi let out a sigh, then nodded. Naruto mustered together his strength and signaled Hayashi to lean closer to him, then whispered in his ear. There are traitors in the midst of the Hyuga clan. This attempt on my life was an accident. Their real target was your wife, Lady Hyuga. Hayashi's eyes dilated in distress, then whispered back to Naruto in a troubled tone. Are you sure about this, Uzumaki-san? These are some serious accusations you are making? Nodding his head, Naruto said with a strained voice. I'm at the Kyubi. Hayashi gasped, but Naruto continued anyway. He told me that I had ingested some poison that almost killed me. I thought about it for a bit, and realized that the only thing I had even ingested tonight was a cup of tea that Lady Hyuga gave me. Originally it was meant for her. Hayashi's face changed from concern to anger in an instant. Clenching his fist in anger, he stood back up and turned to face the nightstand where the cup was placed. Grabbing the cup, he looked inside. To his delight, there was still some tea left over. It would seem my family is now once again indebted to you, Uzumaki-san. With this I can finally put the council in their place. They have been a thorn in my side for far too long. Taking out a scroll, he seals the cup of tea inside to preserve whatever trace of poison is left over. Looking back over at Naruto, Hayashi says, now where are those damned medics? I sent a messenger out over an hour ago. Naruto smirked in pain, then remarked, Hyuga-sama, by chance did you tell the messenger who it was that needed treatment? Yes, of course I told the messenger that you need medical attention immediately. Why? Hayashi responded with a confused tone. Naruto started chuckling softly through the pain he was feeling. I guess all the stories are true about how they treat people like me. There is no point waiting for the medics, Hayashi-sama, they will never come. What do you mean, people like you? Hayashi asked. Slowly moving his hand to lift up his shirt and revealing his stomach, channeling some chakra through his hands, a seal appeared over his stomach. Jinchurikis, Naruto replied in an emotionless tone. I thought all the stories that Jiraiya told, about how people would put all the blame of what the Kyubi did on me, was just some joke to scare me a bit. But now I see the truth. If you want me to leave, Hyuga-sama, I will not hold it against you. Naruto sat up and turned his head away from Hayashi. Hayashi sat down on the bed next to Naruto and placed a hand on his shoulder, causing Naruto to look back over at Hayashi. Naruto, I don't think I will ever understand what you are feeling right now, but I just want you to know how ignorant those people are for hating you for what the Kyuubi did. Though maybe in your lapse of rationalization you forgot how seals work, I may not be an expert on seals like Jiraiya-sama is, but I know for a fact that you are not the Kyuubi. You are the scroll and he is the cup of tea. So don't beat yourself up over what these imbeciles think, and just worry about what's important to you. Hayashi finished with a smile, then stood back up and walked over to the door and opened it, revealing a worried Hitomi and Hinata. The moment Hayashi stepped aside for them to enter, Hinata ran over to Naruto and embraced him in a hug, once again crying into his chest. You're all right, Hinata cried out. I was so worried about you when you started shaking on the bed and vomiting blood. So I ran and got Otosan and Okasan. Naruto smiled and softly patted her back. Thank you for your concern, Hinata-sama. I will be fine after some rest. Yes, he will need his rest, so Hinata, let's leave and allow Naruto-kun to sleep, Hitomi interjected. Hinata feverishly shook her head, then pushed Naruto back down onto his back and snuggled into his side. I will stay here just in case something happens again. Using her best attempt at the Hyuga's famed serious tone. Hitomi giggled, then turned over to Hayashi. They make such a cute couple, don't they? Closing the door to Hinata's room, Hayashi replied, yes they do. Maybe they were destined to be together, seeing how you and Kushina were best friends. I'm pretty sure this would have happened if she was alive. Taking his wife's hand in his, he brought it to his lips and gave it a soft kiss. Go back to sleep, my love. I will join you shortly, there is something I must do. Hitomi nods and turns and walks down the hallway toward their room. Hayashi watching her back as she leaves, Hayashi says to himself, I'm sorry Hitomi, I have forgotten my love for you and our daughter these few years, but I will make it up to you somehow. But first I have to see how deep the treachery of the Hyuga clan runs and put an end to their nonsense. Flashback. 3 to 4 years ago. Hayashi stormed into his office after a meeting concerning the Kyuubi's attack was called with the civilian and shinobi councils. There he had learned that Minato had sacrificed himself and his wife in order to seal away the Kyuubi into a boy named Naruto that was now under the care of Jiraiya. He wasn't angry that Konoha had suffered extensive damages from the Kyuubi's attack. Heck, he wasn't even angry at the fact that there were Hyugas among the casualties of the attack. But what broke the usually strong-willed Hayashi was the death of his best friend Minato Namikaze. The man that changed him from the dorky, nervous Hayashi Hyuga to the strong-willed and vigilant Hayashi Hyuga was now dead. Walking over to his desk, Hayashi sat down, then swept everything off his desk in a moment of rage. Alerted by all the sounds coming from inside the room, the door to the room opens, revealing a concerned Hitomi. In a concerning voice she asks, Is everything okay, Hayashi? Hayashi takes out a bottle of sake and a cup from his drawer and pours himself a cup. Minato and Kushina are dead, he says in an emotionless tone. No, Hitomi whispers out. How? Without looking up at her from his cup of sake, Hayashi said, Hitomi, I don't want to talk about it right now, I just want some time to think about what happened tonight. Without responding to him, Hitomi just closed the door behind her while wiping tears from her eyes. End flashback. Chapter 8 Meetings. The Hokage was currently experiencing one of his biggest migraines since the Yondaime had died. He thought to himself, this boy, only one night and you've already find yourself in the middle of all this trouble. He had first gotten into the middle of an international problem within a minute of stepping into Konoha, then afterwards he was nearly killed in what a message from Hayashi described as an attempted takeover of the clan from the inside. Though with all the hassle these issues brought, there was some good that had come out of it. For one, they were able to arrest and interrogate the Kyumonin, and now they had the upper hand in this little political game. At first the Reikage asked Konoha to escort him back to Kyumo so he could be trialed there, but the Hokage had refused to send him back and demanded the Reikage come to Konoha instead, where they would place the Kyumonin before an impartial judge from the Land of Iron. Reluctantly the Reikage had agreed to the Hokage's demand, and now in a day's time he would arrive to oversee that this so-called traitor got his fair trial. The Hokage would have continued his train of thoughts, but a knock on his door prevented that. Composing himself and straightening his slightly disheveled robes, he said in a commanding voice and a strict face, Come in. The door swung open and in entered Naruto along with a Hyuga guard, which had slightly amused the old Hokage, thinking to himself, it seems you have already gained the favor of the Hyugas. Not many have been able to achieve that in such a short time, Naruto-kun. Good morning, Lord Hokage, Naruto said with a bow. Ah, Naruto-kun, how are you feeling today? I heard you had a pretty rough night. The Hokage replied with a small smile. I've had better nights, Lord Hokage, but my tenant has done quite a good job in patching me up. Naruto answered. Your tenant? Are you talking about the Kyuubi? The Hokage asked in a slightly worried tone. Yes, Hokage-sama, it was only because of the Kyuubi was I able to come back from the edge of death. Though this might seem like a weird statement, but it would seem the Kyuubi is not the demon others make him out to be. In reality, he is kind of nice. Naruto replied. Be that as it may, foxes are known to be notorious tricksters, Naruto-kun. I wouldn't be so trusting of the Kyuubi if I were you, the Hokage said as he stood up and walked over to where Naruto was standing. I will keep your advice in mind, Hokage-sama. But from what I was able to gain from my short interaction with the Kyuubi, though he is easily irritable, he's actually quite understanding. Naruto responded in a reassuring tone. Well, you know him better than anybody, so I will trust in your belief in the Kyuubi, Naruto-kun, the Hokage said with a smile, then placed his hand on his shoulder. Now why don't we go out for a walk through Konoha? I could use a break from all this work and give you a tour. He waved his hand behind him to show all the paperwork he had left over. Naruto thought about asking why the Hokage just didn't use Kage Bunshin like he had seen Jiraiya use back in Mount Maiboku. But he didn't, because if the Hokage was the so-called god of shinobi, then he should have been able to figure out what a 4-year-old boy did. Walking out into the sunny day, the Hokage took Naruto around Konoha for a tour, showing him where the best place to go to get weapons, where to get the most durable clothing, and a nice little shop that the Hokage said made some of the best dango he ever had. They had decided to stop there for a break, and it was here that Naruto met one of the more interesting characters of Konoha. Ah, welcome back, Anko-chan, the Hokage said to a young girl with purple hair that was shaped like a palm tree, dressed erotically in a fishnet shirt and pants only covered up by a beige trench coat and orange miniskirt. She was probably around 12 years old. Turning to the Hokage, Anko said with a mouth full of dango. Oh hey old man, you stopping for lunch? Without waiting for the Hokage to reply, she immediately began devouring multiple sticks of dango at once again. Naruto was appalled by her actions. For one, she was openly disrespecting the Hokage, whom for some reason wasn't angry but rather had an amused look on his face when watching the spectacle that was the young girl. Then there was her clear disregard for table manners. Maybe she's just really hungry, that must be it, Naruto thought. Naruto watched her in a bit of awe because he thought he had a big appetite, but his was clearly dwarfed by this girl's love for dango. Maybe it's because of that puberty thing that I read about in Jiraiya's books, Naruto also thought to himself. Yeah, that must be it. Yes, Anko-chan, I was just bringing Naruto-kun here for a small break and some snacks. I've grown quite fond of this establishment, ever since you dragged me here to treat you to lunch, Anko-chan, the Hokage answered. With a mouth full of dango, Anko replied, That's right old man, I told you, remember. I said you would love this place and that I would never steer you wrong. After she finished, she proceeded to order another round of dango. The Hokage nodded, then walked over to Anko's table and asked, Do you mind if me and Naruto-kun joined you for lunch? I'm sure you two could become quite good friends. Anko stopped eating her dango and squinted at Naruto a bit, then said with a smile, Sure old man, not like I could stop you if you really wanted to. Anyway, this is kind of your village. But let's make this clear, you and the brat get your own food, this is mine. She pulled the plates of dango closer to her protectively. Smiling, the Hokage answered, Of course, Anko-chan, even though I am a Kage, I would never dare come between you and your dango. That's unless I wanted a death sentence. The Hokage rubbed his chin slightly, then said, Oh my, where are my manners? I've been so caught up talking to Anko here I've forgotten about you, Naruto-kun. Come here and let Anko introduce herself to you. Naruto walked up and stood in front of Anko, who put down her stick of dango and stuck her hand out to give Naruto a handshake. Staring at her hand, which had quite a bit of fallen dango pieces on it, he hesitated, then grasped her hand lightly. Shaking his hand, Anko said, Hey kid, name's Anko Mitarashi, Chunin of Konoha. My goal is to become head of the interrogation department and be recognized as the sexiest kunoichi ever. What about you, kid? Slightly shocked at her last statement, Naruto replied, Pleasure to meet you, Mitarashi-san. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, and as for a goal, I don't really have one yet. Though aren't you a bit young for the title of sexiest kunoichi ever? Waving a stick of dango in Naruto's face, Anko replied, Look kid, where you come from it might be different, but in any ninja village once you get your Hitaiki you are officially an adult. And you know what, I'm not far from achieving that goal either. Also don't call me Mitarashi-san, makes me feel old, you can call me Anko-chan. She finished with a smirk and a wink. Naruto thought for a moment, then asked, Okay Anko-chan, I have a question though, is there any difference between most beautiful kunoichi and the sexiest kunoichi? The Hokage watched the two young children interacting, intrigued with their conversation. Though slightly worried about Naruto's question, he thought to himself, You better be careful what you say, Naruto, or you're going to find yourself in quite a bit of trouble and possibly pain. Anko, also intrigued with the boy, stated, Why does it matter if it's most beautiful or sexiest kunoichi? It's pretty much the same thing. Naruto, putting his hands in a thinking pose, said, Well, the thing is, if you were to say you were the most beautiful kunoichi ever, I would have to say you are clearly mistaken. What? Anko roared out while leaking out a tremendous amount of killing intent, which for some reason Naruto was completely unfazed by. Hell, he looked like he was deep in thought. But it was a completely different story for everybody else inside the dango shop. Even the Hokage, the strongest ninja in the village, was slightly uncomfortable with the sheer amount of killing intent Anko was letting out, but didn't show it physically. Grabbing the front of Naruto's shirt and bringing him in front of her face, she said in a sadistic tone, "So who is this supposed kunoichi whom you find more beautiful than me?" Struggling slightly and choking a bit from Anko's grip, he said out, "Lady Hyuga." Anko let out a loud HMPH, then let go of Naruto's shirt, causing him to fall on his ass. Then she muttered something along the lines of "damn Hyuga genetics." Inside the Hyuga compound in one of the larger meeting rooms, Hitomi Hyuga sneezed lightly into one of her kimono's sleeves. She was currently entertaining all the main branch's children with the stories of the history of the Hyuga clan from its conception in Konoha till when her husband took over the mantle as the clan head. A meeting of all the main branch's children was unheard of until it was suddenly requested by Hayashi. When asked why by the parents, he told them that the history of the clan was being forgotten by the younger generation, and now they needed to be educated in it. Though there was some truth to Hayashi's words, all of this was just a guise for Hayashi. His true intention was to use children to put his plan to flush out the traitors and his council into action. He had ran some tests on the tea that he had taken from Naruto's cup, and he had discovered that the poison was a slow-acting poison from Kusa that weakened your immune system over time. This poison was soaked into Hitomi's tea leaves and was released from the leaves when hot water was added. Doing more tests, he found to his horror that the entire jar of the tea leaves that Hitomi was so fond of was poisoned. Hayashi assumed this was done for two reasons: one, that it couldn't be traced back toward whoever poisoned the leaves because different servants would bring her tea to her every night, and second, whoever had poisoned the tea knew his wife well enough that they knew this was the one flaw in her character. She was just plain addicted to that type of tea, and because it was imported directly from the land of snow. This made it extremely expensive and was always high in demand in Konoha. Hell, it was high demand in all the elemental countries. So only Hitomi would usually indulge in it. Hayashi thought to himself, tea leaves from a country covered in snow, a selling point didn't get better than that. Regardless, while Hitomi was entertaining the children, Hayashi had a meeting with all the main branch members regarding the Hyuga clan's monthly spending budget. With his reading glasses on, Hayashi was reading off a list he had written last night. "We seem to have gone over budget this month, so all spending for the rest of the month will have to be cut back." Gasps were heard all through the room. One of the elder council members said, "How is that possible, Hayashi? Has the Hyuga bank account deteriorated so much that we have passed our budget just 2 weeks into the month?" Hayashi replied with a monotone voice, "Well, there has been an influx of order for eye drops which can only be explained by the increase in pollen count this year. Among this we have a couple of shipments from Kusa, hair conditioner from Hot Spring Country, and multiple payments to a shop that specializes in drawing portraits of nobles. Then, to a lesser extent, certain council members are certainly enjoying the lavish lifestyle by indulging in finer red wines that Konoha has to offer." Although it seemed like Hayashi wasn't paying attention to the rest of the council while he was reading the list, in reality he was scanning the room with his Byakugan. The glasses he was wearing had a Genjusta placed on them to hide his Byakugan, which was currently scanning the room for anything that stood out, especially during the part when he said there were shipments from Kusa. He had witnessed 5 of the council members slightly flinch to his delight. Now there was just one more step in his plan. Taking off his glasses, he looked up from the paper to the council and said, "Now this is just a warning to the rest of you. I will let this slide this time, but I hope we do not need to have this meeting next month." Letting his words seep into the rest of the council for a minute, he then said, "If nobody else has any questions, then this meeting is concluded. Oh, and before you leave, do finish the tea that was served to you. It was very expensive." Giving the entire council a moment to finish the cup of tea, he said with a smirk, "It's my wife's favorite tea leaves from the land of snow. She was nice enough to share with the council and the children she is teaching at the moment." The reaction from the council was instantaneous. There were some that seemed grateful to be able to sample such expensive tea. But what stood out to Hayashi was that the same 5 council members that flinched earlier, their faces had turned pale in shock and fear. Inwardly, Hayashi said with a smirk, "Gotcha?" as he watched the 5 of them leave the meeting room. Inside a Hataka's room, name I made up for one of the council members, the 5 council members were currently arguing with each other. "Hataka, please tell me as you have an antidote to the poison you have been giving to Hitomi," one of the council members pleaded. "Don't worry about the poison. In small quantities like 1 cup it is no threat to a fully grown adult," Hataka responded smugly. "But that bastard Hayashi said that Hitomi also served it to the children. My daughter is in that group. Will the poison affect her? What will happen to the children?" another council member said in a frantic tone. "Yeah, didn't you hear what happened to that Uzumaki kid that drank the poison?" another one said. Gritting his teeth a bit, Hataka replied, Yeah, don't worry, I have the antidote locked up in my safe. Just bring the children around later, and I will administer the antidote." Boom! The door to Hataka's room suddenly was blown apart. When the smoke had cleared, Hayashi stood in the middle, flanked by a squad of Anbu. "He is sure," Hataka stuttered out. "Hataka," Hayashi said in a cold tone, "you and your accomplices are now under arrest, under the charges of attempted murder and attempted coup of the clan." Seeing the council members weren't going to say anything, Hayashi roared out, "ANBU, arrest them." Chapter 9, Mr. 8. Currently Hinata and Naruto were playing in a park not far from the Hyuga compound with 2 Hyuga branch member guards watching over her. Hinata didn't have many friends because it was frowned upon to befriend commoners and the other children in the clan were always busy training and studying. But after meeting Naruto, that all changed. Hinata now finally had a friend who would play and spend time with her, and she was going to do anything in her power to keep her new friend even if it meant going against her clan. Because to her Naruto was her knight in shining armor, and she loved every part of him from the cute little whiskers on his cheeks which she was so tempted to stroke but was too shy to do so, his beautiful golden blonde spiky hair. It was like a beacon of light compared to the usual bland brown hair of the Hyuga clan. Then there was his kind and gentle personality, and how he was a true gentleman to her. And how could she forget about those deep dreamy ocean blue eyes that she just loved to stare and get lost into? Ever since they had woken up, Naruto had been catering to all her needs, almost like a newly married couple. Hinata blushed at that thought. Even now at the park, Hinata for the first time in so long was actually able to enjoy the feeling of somebody pushing her on the swing. It was quite glorious, just like how she remembered when her mother used to push her before her father had forbid it. He had deemed that a Hyuga pushing a swing to be too demeaning and below something a Hyuga would do even for the branch members. She was enjoying it so much she didn't even realize they had been swinging for over an hour. While she was swinging and Naruto was pushing, and it wasn't until her stomach let out a light grumble did Naruto say something. "Hinata-sama, do you want to get something to eat?" Hinata blushed slightly in embarrassment of her stomach growling and at the fact that Naruto called her Hinata-sama, replied to Naruto. "Yes, I would like that very much, Naruto-kun, and please, how many times have I told you not to call me that?" Bowing slightly to Hinata he said, "My apologizes, Lady Hinata." Hinata slapped Naruto on the shoulder in a light and playful tone. "Naruto-kun, Hinata-chan is fine." Tilting his head in confusion he asked, "Do all people in Konoha not care about honorifics?" Also tilting her head in confusion Hinata said, "What do you mean, Naruto-kun?" "Sweet Kami, she looks so cute when she looks confused like that." Naruto, snapping out of his thoughts, says, "Well, when I met the Hokage he asked me to call him Gigi. And your mom gives me this slightly annoyed look when I call her Lady Hyuga, and you don't like it when I call your Hinata-sama." Hinata brought her hand to her mouth and giggled into it lightly before she said, "Well, I guess my mom doesn't like being addressed as Lady Hyuga because it makes her feel old. And as for you, Naruto, you are my best friend, so there is no need for you to regard me in such a manner. Though I'm kind of surprised the Hokage wants you to call him Grandpa. I'm guessing he really likes you. My Otosan, on the other hand, he loves it when people refer to him as Hayashi-sama or Hyuga-sama. He says he's just getting what he deserves, which is the recognition of the people below him." "Oh, I see, Hinata-chan." Naruto saw her blush when he said that. "Well, enough about honorifics. We should get some food for you before you faint." Smiling, Naruto offered her his arm. Returning the smile, she took it, locking their arms together and resting her head on his shoulder. She then began steering him towards a bakery which stocked her favorite cinnamon buns. Unknown to them, in the background, the 2 Hyuga guards watching over them were snickering at the sight of the young couple-to-be. Upon nearing the bakery, the 2's ears were introduced to that of rapping emanating from inside the bakery. Entering, they noticed a tall, well-built tan man with white hair, who wore dark sunglasses much like the Aburame clan. He had on a white flak jacket, blue ninja pants, a long white scarf, and a ton of swords strapped to his back. "Hey man, hurry up with that dough, 'cause I be itching to go. Though I know you love to hear my rhymes, you see I'm clearly running out of time. Yo." Naruto, Hinata the baker, and the 2 Hyuga guards all sweat dropped hearing the man's terrible rhyming skills. Naruto whispers softly so only Hinata could hear, "Maybe he should be getting a rhyming dictionary instead." Hinata giggled lightly, causing the man to turn around. The moment Naruto saw his Hitaite that the man was wearing, it instantly reminded of what happened that night Hinata was kidnapped, and instinctively he pushed Hinata behind him. Seething with rage of what Kumo had attempted to do to his best friend, slowly he drew on the Kyuubi's power, causing his fangs to elongate and his whiskers to become more pronounced. "Kumo," Naruto snarled out. Whoa, calm down, yo. I mean you no harm, Killer Bee responded while bringing his hands up in front of him. "Why, oh kid, what's happening?" Naruto heard the Kurama yell in his head. Naruto had learned his name when they were discussing on how to make a mental link between each other. It actually wasn't too difficult. All Naruto had to do was imagine a button that allowed them to talk and flick it on, and bam, he could talk to Kurama whenever he wanted to. "There's a ninja from Kumo in front of us. I'm scared they are trying to kidnap Hinata again," Naruto said in his mind. Kid, there's something weird about this guy. I can't really put my paw on it, but hey kid, ask before Kurama could finish. Naruto interrupted him. "Kurama, not now, let me make sure Hinata is safe first." Kurama grinned and thought, damn, he is protective of his mate. Naruto, not taking his eyes of the Kumonin, said out loud and in commanding voice, "Kotakuma, take Lady Hinata home." The 2 Hyuga guards appeared next to Hinata and placed their hands on her shoulder. Hinata brushed them off her and grabbed onto Naruto's hand and pleaded, "No, I won't go without you." Bringing her hand to his mouth, he kissed it softly to reassure her, then said, though all it really did was make her blush wildly, Do not worry about me, Lady Hinata, I just want to have a talk with him. I will be fine, so please go with Ko and Takuma. I'll bring you back some cinnamon buns after I'm done here. He finished with a smile. Although a bit hesitant, Hinata let go over Naruto's hand and allowed Ko and Takuma to shun her away. Seeing that Hinata was now safe, Naruto let out a sigh, still glaring at the Kumonin. He said, I know somebody who wants to talk to you. Well, not actually you, but somebody very close to you. So why don't we go somewhere more private, Mr. 8? The Kumonin nodded his head in slight shock that this little boy knew his secret. He would have to find out how he knew. Naruto then said, but before we go I must keep my promise to somebody. Walking over to the counter, he said to the baker, Good afternoon, Keiji-san. I would like 8 of Lady Hinata's favorite cinnamon buns to go, he said with a smile. The Kumonin's sweat dropped at the boy's complete 180 change in personality. 1 minute he was cold and commanding, now he was back to the young, joyful, and humble boy he looked to be. The baker quickly bagged the cinnamon buns, then handed them over to Naruto, who dropped off the money he owed plus a generous tip to the man. Giving his thanks to the baker, Naruto motioned the Kumonin to follow him toward a nearby park. Walking toward a bench, Naruto sat down and motioned for the Kumonin to sit as well. Reaching inside the bag of sweets, he took one out and offered it to the Kumonin, who took it with thanks. Naruto taking one out for himself, he took a bite then said, You're different from the other Kumonins. I can feel you have no ill intentions toward Hinata. The man, also taking a bite out of the bun, replied, I do not always agree with the actions my village takes in order to gain an upper hand. But at the end of the day, even if I am loyal to my village, I refuse to do something as vile as kidnapping children so we can turn them into breeders. Naruto growled lowly then said, I see, I am glad I trusted you. Well, at first I didn't, and I am sorry for not at least giving you a chance. I hope you can see why I was so concerned for my friend's safety. The man nodded in understanding, said, I understand, in a world like ours you can never be too trusting, but I guess we can attempt to start now. Then he started raping to Naruto's displeasure. Yo, my name is Killer Bee. And I'm strongest in Kumo, you see. I totally got the flow, you know. Now it's your turn to go. He finished while pointing at Naruto with both his index fingers. Naruto's right eye twitched slightly then said, my name's Naruto Uzumaki, and I guess I hope that one day I want to be the strongest as well. I see your dreams like me, you and I could be brothers, you and me. Killer Bee rapped out. Suddenly he took out a notebook and immediately jotted something down. After he finished, he said out loud, no longer rapping but in a more serious tone. But more importantly, how did you know about the Hachibi? 'Cause that's supposed to be a secret, you know. Lifting up his shirt slightly to show Bee his seal, he said, I know because the QB told me. He also asked if you would mind connecting with me so that he could have a chat with the Hachibi? Bee scratched his chin lightly then said, yeah, Hachibi here doesn't seem to mind. He then raises his fist up in front of Naruto. Naruto looked at him slightly confused, then after a couple of seconds he understood what Bee wanted him to do, and so he also raised his own fist, and they bumped them together. Suddenly they were pulled into the darkness of their minds, and when Naruto could see again, he was sitting on top of the water with the Kurama and his cage behind him. And in front of him was a giant ox-like creature with 8 giant octopus tails behind him. And what surprised Naruto was to find that Bee was sitting on top of the Hachibi's head. Kurama, it's been a long, too long, hasn't it, brother? The Hachibi said. Yes, it has been, Gyuki, though I see we are in very different circumstances with your Jinchuriki than I am with mine. Kurama replied, interested in the bond between Bee and Gyuki. Quite interesting, isn't it, Kurama? Though I'm quite surprised you haven't attempted to same as me, Gyuki said with a smirk. Letting out a roar of laughter, Kurama said, it's not like I haven't tried, brother, but as you see. Kurama places his hand on the cage. But the Yondaime was a master of seals. There is no possible way for boy to properly let me out and live without the key to the seal. At best I could just give him a mere fraction of my power. Such a shame, Kurama. It pains me to see one of us locked up like some sort of wild animal. Gyuki spat out. Naruto turned his head from his seated position to look at Kurama and said, I'm sorry, Kurama. I can only imagine what it's like for the most powerful tailed beast to be locked up. If I could somehow I would let you out of the cage, I would. But know this, I would not let you out of my body. Kurama looked down at Naruto with a fox-like grin. It's okay, kid, it's the thought that counts, though it would be nice to be free one day. Naruto stands up and walks over to the cage and raises his fist up and sticks it past the cage bars. Kurama, seeing this, raises his giant paw up and gives Naruto an extremely light fist bump while they are connected. Naruto says, I promise one day you will be free, at least in my mind. Enough with the tear-jerkers, you two. Why did you want to talk to me anyway, Kurama? Gyuki said while wiping a non-existent tear away from his eye. Oh, I can't talk to my beloved brother for old time's sakes, now you wound me, brother. Kurama let out a light chuckle and said, but actually I just wanted to see what got my host here so worked up, and when I tapped into his senses I felt there was something familiar about the Kumonin. Kurama then lay back down on his forearms and continued, took me some time to realize that Bee here was a Jinchuriki, and some more to discover it was you sealed inside of him. And drawing you in here was just a way I could make sure you meant no harm to the boy. Hearing this, Bee spoke up for the first time since entering their connected mindscape. Look, Fluffy, like I told Naruto before, I am nothing like the Council of Kumo who just want more and more power. Naruto here is now a brother to me and I would never hurt him. That's good to hear, Kurama said in a slightly irked tone at Bee's nickname for him. Meanwhile, in the Hokage's office, the Raikage sat in a chair in front of the Hokage's desk while discussing the attempted kidnapping with each other. Hokage Dano, I just want to give my deepest apologizes for what one of my ambassadors attempted to do, and how he took advantage of Konoha opening their arms to Kumo in a sign of peace, the Raikage said with his head slightly down in shame for what his counsel did behind his back. Unlike his father, he did not have a fetish for obtaining bloodlines, and even if he did, he wasn't stupid. Why risk starting a war with Konoha, who were known as being the most powerful in the elemental nations, when there was another country that treated their bloodline users worse than how people would treat Jinchurikis? Heck, if his father was still alive and was still Raikage, he would have assembled an army and sacked Kiri, and justified it by stating that he was saving the bloodline users from mass genocide. The Hokage replied while smoking his pipe slightly, Yes, I understand, Raikage Dano, but it will be hard-pressed for you to prove that you took no part in the attempted kidnapping. Suddenly the door opened and Hayashi entered saying, Not quite, Hokage-sama. Seeing the Raikage in the room, he bowed toward him slightly, then said, I have all the proof you need. Making a motion with his hand, the Umbu escorted in the 5 Hyuga traders who now had freshly painted cage-bird seals on their foreheads. Smiling, the Hokage said, Oh, are these the traders you were talking about? Seeing Hayashi nod, he azes to the Raikage. Seems to be hope now, doesn't it, Raikage Dano? He gave the Raikage a short grin, then turned to the Umbu. Take them to Inochi, I want everything they know in a report by Tomro. Hayashi placed his hands up, halting the Umbu. Hokage-sama, there is no need for that, they have already confessed everything to me and the squad of Umbu I was assigned, whom also wrote down all the names of the counselors in Kumo that they had made the deal with. One of the Umbu walked up to the Hokage and handed him a piece of paper. The Hokage took a quick look over it, then handed it over to the Raikage, whom upon seeing the names on it clenched the paper in fury. Those traitors, he roared out loud. Turning over to Hayashi, he gave him a short nod, then said, Hyuga-san, when I get back to Kumo I will make sure to punish them properly. Kind of ironic that a Hyuga would be the one to clear my good name. Though I am angry that Kumo attempted to kidnap my beloved daughter, I only want justice dealt to those who authorized it, not somebody they used as a scapegoat to hide behind. Hayashi said to the Raikage, who was surprised at the Hyuga's calm and forgiving demeanor, nodded in thanks. Since I am of no more use here, Hokage-sama, I will be taking my leave, while leaving Ibiki some new friends. Hayashi pointed at the 5 Hyugas. I will return to pick them up after he is done playing. Turning toward the Raikage, he said with a bow, I hope you have a speedy time in taking out your trash like I did mines when you get back to Kumo, Raikage-sama. With one more short bow, Hayashi exited the room. Back with Naruto, he was walking back to the Hyuga compound after his chat with Bee and Gyuki. He thought to himself, I wonder what Hinata is up to. I hope she's not too worried about me. I better hurry up before she starts freaking out. He turns into the market district, knowing that if he cut across the district he would get back to the compound faster. Suddenly 4 drunken shinobi walking out of a bar ran over, and the leader of the group grabbed him and lifted him up. So the mighty demon has returned to Konoha, he slurred out, then he slapped Naruto right across the face, leaving a bright red handprint. Many of the people in the market stopped to watch what was happening, but nobody stepped up to do anything. Why did you return back here, demon? The man roared out, throwing Naruto onto the floor hard. Naruto refused to give the man the pleasure of screaming out in pain. Naruto quickly assumed a fetal position while trying to protect the bag of cinnamon buns with his body. The man turned away from Naruto and addressed the crowd. This is demon here is none other the Kyuubi brat. There was a loud gasp from the audience. And you know what I saw him do earlier? He was contaminating the sweet, innocent Hyuga heiress. He deserves this punishment for trying to corrupt the prestigious Hyuga clan. Raising his leg, he stomped on Naruto's ribs. Naruto felt a few of them fracture, but he still refused to scream in pain or protest. But he couldn't stop the tears from flowing out. The man reached down and grabbed Naruto by his collar again. So the demon actually knows how to cry, he roared out in laughter. Cry as much as you want, brat, knowing what your tears are properly poisonousness. Though I shouldn't free you of your misery, I'm going to kill you, demon, for the crime of corrupting the Hyuga heiress and most likely plotting to destroy Konoha. He reached into his hoister and pulled out an kunai ready to impale Naruto, who shut his eyes shut and clenched his teeth, waiting for the moment when he would die. Die, demon! He heard the man yell out. Suddenly Naruto heard a wet SBUCH, and his entire body felt tired and heavy. Then he had the sensation of falling, and he hit the ground, wondering if this was how death felt like. When he finally opened his eyes after what felt like an eternity, he was once again laying inside the sewer of his mindscape, staring at Kurama, who was staring back at him. Kid, you're awake. What have I done to owe the pleasure of you visiting so often lately? Kurama said with a grin. Naruto sighed inwardly and said, "This is the second time this week I am facing death. Maybe I should have just stayed in Mount Maiboku." Kurama chuckled slightly. "So you're telling me saving and befriending that cute little Hyuga girl, as you called her, not worth it?" Naruto blushed, remembering earlier today when he called Hinata cute. "Yeah, I guess you're right. I'm just worried what she's going to do once she finds out I died. She will never forgive me for breaking 2 promises to her. You know she might commit suicide if she hears you died," Kurama stated nonchalantly. Instantly standing up and running over to the Kyuubi's cage. "What do you mean, Kurama? You do realize the girl is in love with you, right, kid? Even if she doesn't commit suicide, her heart would be broken forever, and nobody would be able to help her. She would be forced to live a life of sorrow, misery, and eternal hate," Kurama replied. Naruto let himself fall to a sitting position and he drew his knees in and hugged them into his body. "I guess meeting her was such a selfish act of fate on my part. I'd rather have never met her and died than making her suffering like how you said." Tears now flowing down Naruto's face. Kurama sighed. "Look, kid, before you drown yourself in tears, I just have to say you really got to stop being so negative. Always assuming you're dead. Kami, this is definitely a case of deja vu." Wiping the tears from his eyes, Naruto asked, "Wait, I'm not dead?" Kurama shook his head, which prompted Naruto to once again jump up and launch himself at the bars of the cage and yell, "Damn it, Kurama, why did you lead me on to believe that I was dead again, and how my Hinata-chan was going to kill herself?" Kurama said with a shrug, "Can you blame me, kid? I was bored." Bringing his face close to Naruto, he asked, "And what is this about your Hinata-chan?" He finished with a giant foxy grin. Naruto grew a tick mark and blushed slightly at Kurama's words. Before Naruto could give any retort, he heard somebody walking through the water behind him, and what sounded like heavy samurai battle armor. He then heard somebody say, "So this is who Mito chose as her successor." Chapter 10: The Senju. "Hashirama," Kurama growled out, "come over here so I can tear you a new one." He then began slamming against the cage, causing Naruto enough discomfort to force him down to his knees. "Kyuubi, I see you are still as angry as I remembered. You're going to have to calm down." Going through multiple hand signs, the newly dubbed Hashirama said, Mokutan, nativity of a sea of trees. Suddenly multiple tree branches burst from the floor around Hashirama, shooting toward Kurama's cage, but before they could get any closer, tree branches rose out from in front of the cage, blocking Hashirama's branches. "What?" Hashirama said out in shock. Kurama also stopped banging on the cage, also in shock seeing the wood rising to protect him. "I don't care if you were the Hokage, but I will not let you hurt Kurama," Naruto said from his position on his knees while he was palming the ground with both hands. "Impossible, he has the ability to use Mokutan, and he didn't even need any hand signs to counter mine," Hashirama said to himself. "Boy, what is your name?" Hashirama said louder so Naruto could hear. Naruto standing back up to look at Hashirama. "My name is Uzumaki, Naruto Shodaime-sama." "Uzumaki?" Hashirama thought back to his wife Mito. "Who are your parents, Naruto?" "I don't think I am authorized to tell you who my parents are. According to the Sandaime, it is a SS-class secret." Hashirama raised an eyebrow at the boy. "Didn't you address me as Shodaime before, Naruto? As the Shodaime, you are to lead me to believe that I do not have the authorization to know about a mere SS-class secret. Are you mocking me?" Naruto shook his head then replied, "I would never dream of mocking you, Shodaime-sama. But if I'm not mistaken, you are a former Hokage, which means that I am not sworn in loyalty to you but the current Hokage of Konoha, the Sandaime. And how do I know you aren't a Gen just to cast on me to obtain the secrets of Konoha?" Hashirama was intrigued by this boy's reasoning. "Tell me, what secrets would a mere 10-year-old boy know about?" Naruto cocked his head slightly then asked in a confused tone, 10 years old? "I'm flattered, Shodaime-sama, but I am only 4. Kid, I might be a few generations behind, but I know what a 10-year-old looks like, and you clearly are at least 10 years old," Hashirama said with a slightly annoyed look at the boy. Naruto turned to Kurama and asked, "Kurama, what is he talking about?" Kurama snickered slightly then said, "Why don't you see for yourself, kid?" Kurama slammed his paw on the water, which caused some of the water to ripple up and shape into a mirror-like object. Naruto looked into his reflection and gasped, immediately grabbing his face and saying out loud, "What in Kami's name are these?" While he attempted to rub away the red marks on his face that were overlining his middle whiskers on both sides of his cheeks. Think second Hokage red marks on the side of his face. "Will Hinata like these?" he said out loud by accident. When Kurama heard this, he roared out in laughter. "Don't worry, kid, I'm sure your mate will love them. Even if she doesn't, there's a bunch of other things I'm sure she will enjoy that will clearly make up for it, like your increased height and the growth of your hair and slightly toned body." Naruto looked at the rest of his reflection and realized Kurama was right. He was now taller, his hair had grown out more, and he was definitely in very good shape. Only now did he realize that his clothes were now extremely tight on him. Think how Minato looked when he first met Kushina. That's what he looks like. The only difference are the whiskers and the 2 red marks that cover the middle ones. You know, with this sudden growth spurt you just got, I wonder if what you're packing down there has gotten bigger too. Kurama said in a casual tone while also pointing one claw at the budge Naruto had, in his now too tight pants. Naruto, also curious, pulled forward his pants and underwear slightly to look inside. Upon looking inside, he immediately let go of his pants and underwear, allowing them to snap back in place. With a blush, he said quietly, "Yep, definitely a growth spurt." Kurama snickered at Naruto's words, then said, "Yeah, I'm now positive your mate will definitely love the new you." Naruto crossed his arms, then frowned slightly at Kurama before saying, "I'm not against any of these new changes to my body, even though you make it sound like they are only to please Hinata-chan, which is her name, by the way, Kurama," Naruto said with a slightly annoyed tone. "But what I would like to know is how this all happened." "I think I have a theory of what happened to you, Naruto," Hashirama said, who was now standing behind Naruto. Who jumped slightly, he had forgotten he was there. Hashirama made a slightly amused face at Naruto, then continued, "Over the years of my conflicts with the Kyuubi, I'm guessing some of my chakra was left over and absorbed by the Kyuubi." Kurama, Naruto interrupted. "What?" Hashirama said in a slightly irked tone. "He has a name and it's Kurama. Calling them by their tails is degrading to them," Naruto said in a completely serious tone of voice. Hashirama was surprised that this boy was standing up for the Kyuubi like they were best friends. He wondered how close these two were. Yes, thank you for correcting me, Naruto. Where was I? Oh right, yes, throughout my life I had encountered Kurama here a multitude of times. So I'm guessing that some of my chakra was left over and absorbed into Kurama, and something happened today to trigger it, and thus caused me to appear in your mindscape. Do you know what could have caused this? Well, 2 days ago I was poisoned and almost died, and just now I was attacked by some drunken shinobi hell-bent on getting revenge on Kurama," Naruto answered. Hashirama's face went into a thoughtful look, then he said, "That might be why I appeared in your mindscape, but it doesn't explain how you are able to just Mokutan, and why you have marks similar to my brother on your face. Is it so hard to see why he can use your wood abilities and has your brother's marks, Hashirama?" Kurama said in a deadpan tone. Hashirama said with one eyebrow raised, "What do you mean? Are you slow, Hashirama, or just arrogant? The boy is a senju, is that so hard to accept?" Kurama said while his sweat dropped. "Even if he was a senju, that only explains the marks on his face. What about his use of the Mokutan? Even in the Senju clan only I was able to use it," Hashirama said in an irritated tone. "I believe that's where your side of the story comes in. Combining his traumatic event plus your residue chakra in me, I'm guessing it was able to coax the Mokutan and Senju traits out onto his body," Kurama responded in an amused tone. "To us, this is a logical explanation to what happened with the boy, but to those on the outside, what will Naruto here tell them?" Hashirama replied, still slightly irked at Kurama's insult. "If I were to recommend something, I believe that Naruto shouldn't reveal that you played a part in his sudden growth. It might cause him to gain some unwanted attention," Kurama suggested. "Yes, I agree," Hashirama, who was slowly starting to see a new side of Kurama, he thought to himself, maybe I should have tried harder to befriend him before. Maybe the kid can just blame it on puberty, Kurama said with a chuckle. Suddenly Naruto felt a slight tugging on his mind, then Kurama said, "Oh kid, it's time to go, the outside world beckons." Naruto smiled then said, "I'll come back and talk with you later, Kurama. Just play nice with Shodame-sama, okay?" Yeah, whatever you say, kid." Kurama puffed up his cheeks and once again blew Naruto into the darkness. Naruto thought while he was floating through the air, sigh, I guess I have to get used to this. Opening his eyes, Naruto felt his head laying on something really soft. He looked up to see the face of Anko and Hayashi looking down at him. "Hyuga-sama, Anko-chan, where am I?" Naruto grumbled out. "You in the hospital, Naruto-kun," Anko purred out seductively. "Damn it, it's happening all over again, just like when you were young, Minato." Hayashi thought to himself, then he smirked and said mentally, "Though if this girl thinks she has a chance against my daughter, she can keep dreaming." The chibi Hayashi in his mind did a mental fist pump. "What happened to me?" Naruto mumbled out, feeling slightly exhausted. "Dude, you impaled a guy, it was totally awesome," Anko said ecstatically. "I did what?" Naruto roared out while he tried to sit up, but he realized he was being held in place by a pair of arms. Tracing the arms to their source, he realized while he was in the hospital and on a hospital cot, he was actually laying between Anko's legs, while she was also on the cot hugging him close to her body with his head resting between her well-developed breasts. He blushed a deep red color that would have put any of Hinata's to shame and said in a more quiet voice, "Anko-chan, why are you in bed with me?" Hayashi, seeing a chance to remove Naruto from the girl's grasp, also questioned Anko, "Yes, Mitarashi-san, why are you in Naruto's cot while holding him in such a suggestive position?" Grinning, Anko replied, "Well, you see, the doctors said you really overexerted yourself, Naruto-kun." She raised one of her hands to his face and traced Naruto's jawline, "And they said you need all the rest you can get." Anko leaned in and whispered in his ear, "I also know how uncomfortable these hospital cots are, so to optimize the amount of rest you get, I offered to be your pillow." She finished with a grin while also nibbling softly at Naruto's earlobe. Hayashi had looked away from the show Anko was putting on, clearly blushing from her actions. Naruto, on the other hand, was blushing in a new shade of red while also a trickle of blood was leaking from his nose. What is this feeling I'm getting in my stomach? Naruto thought to himself. We can add a libido to the list of changes to the kid, can't we, Hashirama? Kurama said through their mental link. There was no reply to Kurama's question. Peering out of his cage, Kurama noticed Hashirama had fainted from embarrassment. His last conscious thought was, when did females become so open with their displays of affection? Yeah, thanks, Anko-chan, Naruto stuttered out, while also turning his head to stare at a spot on the wall. Anko, who was still nibbling on his earlobe, hummed into his ear, don't worry about it, Naruto-kun. I can be your pillow anytime, all you have to do is ask. After finishing, she immediately reattached herself onto Naruto's ear. Hayashi, who hadn't heard what Anko had said, was able to recompose himself. He cleared his throat quite loudly and asked, yes, Mitarashi-san, Naruto-san here will need his rest. But could you inform us of the details of what transpired to cause Naruto-san here to be admitted into the hospital? Moving her hand off Naruto's jawline while also hugging his neck so that his head was now pressed even deeper into her breast, she assumed a thinker pose and started explaining what she had saw. Flashback. 2 to 3 hours ago. Anko's POV. Anko, to her displeasure, was assigned a D-rank mission to deliver a scroll to a shop in the market district. Upon arriving, she noticed a crowd had gathered in front of the bar. Pushing away some of the crowd to get a better look at what was happening, she saw to her horror a drunken shinobi holding Naruto by his collar and drawing out a kunai preparing to stab it into him. The drunken shinobi screamed out, "Die, demon!" But before he could stab the boy with the kunai, a wooden spike grew out of the ground between them and impaled the shinobi through the chest, which caused him to drop Naruto to the ground, who didn't move after he hit the ground. Anko immediately ran over to Naruto, moving his head onto her lap. She shook him slightly. Naruto, are you okay? Anko cried out. Suddenly she felt something hit her back, and then she felt something wet where it had hit. She turned around and noticed somebody had thrown a tomato at her. Suddenly others in the crowd started throwing objects at them, ranging from produce, kitchenware to potentially dangerous weapons at the two. Anko saw a shuriken flying at them. Knowing she couldn't make it in time to stop it, she braced herself for the hit, hoping it wouldn't hit any vital areas. Anko heard a thud but never felt any pain. She opened her eyes slightly, and to her surprise a tree branch had grown out of the piece that had impaled the man to protect them. No way, Anko said to herself. Is wood acting by itself to protect us? Suddenly a bright light emanated from Naruto's body. Anko shielded her eyes from the light, and when it faded away it revealed the newly grown Naruto. Described earlier in the chapter, Anko instant began blushing hard seeing Naruto's new toned and fit body. She didn't even question why it happened. All that mattered to her was that she liked it. And it took every ounce of her self-control plus the fact they were in a hostile environment to not reach and lift up his pants to take a peek at the budge that had grown. Before she could begin her physical examination on the rest of Naruto's body, she felt the presence of the Hokage land behind her. Anko turned around and saw the look of shock on his face. The Sandaime had grown up with opportunity to call the Shodaime at one point his senseis. So when he felt the spike of the Shodaime's chakra, at first he thought it was Tenzo, but he soon realized when he felt the second pulse of the Shodaime's chakra that this was much more pure and concentrated than anything Tenzo could ever had done before. So he had to personally go and investigate the source, accompanied by his Anbu guard, who were worn out by the pure speed of their wizened Sandaime had taken off with. Walking over to Anko, he noticed a boy in her lap, Minato. He whispered silently to himself. Recomposing himself, he asked Anko, "Anko-chan, what happened here?" Anko pulled the Naruto's body closer to her own for her own pleasure and the protection of Naruto, and told the Hokage, "Old man, I don't know what happened, but this idiot." She pointed to the impaled and most likely dead shinobi. Attacked Naruto-kun, but before he could kill him, this wood grew out of the ground and impaled him. Then a bright light come from Naruto-kun, and when the light faded, this is what became of his body. His hot-toned sexy body, she added in her head. "I see," the Hokage said while stroking his beard. "Well, let's get him to the hospital. I need somebody to take a look over him, see if he is okay." Lifting Naruto up, Anko stumbled a bit, forgetting that he wasn't in the same 4-year-old body she could lift up with one hand from 2 days ago. Seeing Anko stumble, the Hokage motioned for the Anbu to take Naruto, but Anko waved them off, not wanting to let go of the delicious hunk of meat in her hands. Flashback end. So that's what happened, and the rest you know, Hyuga-sama, because we met you on the way to the hospital. Finishing with her recap of the events, she once again turned her focus back to the more pressing matter at hand, feeling up the blonde in her arms. Though Anko was kind of pissed that they had bumped into the Hyuga clan leader, if it weren't for him in the room, the things Anko would have done to Naruto while he was unconscious would have put Ika to shame. Leaning her face closer to Naruto's face, she traced one of his normal whiskers with her finger. After she had finished, she stared at the red one in the middle. She whispered into Naruto's ear with all the innocence she might have had left, Naruto-kun, there's something on your face, let me get that off for you. Sticking out her tongue, Anko licked across the length of the red whisker, and when she reached the end she would reverse and go back the whole length again. It's really stubborn, maybe I need to try harder, Anko said in the same tone. At this point Hayashi was fuming with anger, though he couldn't do anything about it because he himself was blushing like mad and even had a trickle of blood running down from his nose. So he had turned his head away while mentally crying a waterfall of tears. He said quietly to nobody in particular, "Damn it, I'm so sorry Hinata, I'll make it up to you somehow." Anko was too preoccupied with her current toy to pay attention to what Hayashi had said, and Naruto was still stuck in a daze of having a girl treat him like this. Just when Anko was able to run her tongue across his face, and most likely over his lips to reach the other red whisker on the other side of his face, so she could make an attempt to clean that one since she was having no progress on the first one. The door to Naruto's room slid open and a female Anbu in a Nico mask with long purple hair walked in. Upon seeing Anko's actions she immediately stumbled and blessed Kami for her Anbu mask because she was instantly blushing like mad. Anko stopped her current deed and looked up and asked with a smile, knowing clearly who was behind that mask, "Hey Nico-chan, what's up with you today?" Uzumaki-kun and Hyuga-sama have been requested by the council immediately, Nico said in an embarrassed tone. Uzumaki-kun, huh? Well, I wasn't done here yet, but you know the council are total assholes, let's not keep them waiting, Anko replied, attempting to tease the usually stoic Anbu a bit. Hell, she made the Hyuga clan head blush. The Nico Anbu was just a piece of cake. Anko released Naruto, who stood up quickly, not realizing that his erection was now struggling to break free out of his pants, which now made quite an impressive tent. Blushing, he attempted to cover it up with his hands, but by the look of hunger in Anko's eyes, he knew it was already too late. Still blushing, Naruto asked, "Excuse me, would it be okay if somebody found me a change of clothes? Mine have gotten a bit tight." Anko pointed to the corner where on top of a stool some clothes laid. "Hokage-sama also saw the state of your clothing, so he had some clothes sent over, you can change into those." Naruto walked over to the pile of clothes, his hand still covering his erection which still refused to wane. Picking up the pants he looked over at Anko, who was staring at him with a Cheshire cat grin. Naruto coughed slightly, and Anko made no movement to leave Naruto's side and said, Anko-chan, Anbu-chan, do you mind stepping out? I have to change." He lifted the pants he was going to change into to get his point across. Whining slight, Anko said with a pout, Do I have to?" Flustering a bit, the Nico Anbu walked over and grabbed Anko, dragging her out of the room. After she had exited the room, the Anbu turned back toward Naruto and said, "I will wait out here for you, so I can escort you to the chambers after you finish changing." Seeing Naruto nod, she closed the door, giving him some much-needed privacy. "You know, Yugao, you have horrible timing," Anko said while still pouting from the being forcefully removed the room. Yeah, it's the end of the world for you, whatever," Yugao said nonchalantly while beginning to buff her nails with a kunai. Back inside with Naruto, he had finished changing into his new clothes. He was wearing a blue long-sleeved turtleneck with extra long sleeves that went past his hands, and an Anbu flak jacket over it. His pants were now a pair of long blue pants that had tape wrapped around the part covered his ankles. Seeing he was changed, Hayashi asked, "So Naruto, are you ready to go?" Coughing slight, Naruto asked with a blush, "Yes, Hyuga-sama, but first how do I deal with this?" He pointed down to his erection, which was still as stiff as it was when Anko had left. Hayashi looked down and found the size of his package for his age quite impressive, but he would never say that out loud. Clearing his throat slightly, Hayashi said, "Now Naruto, what I'm going to do next will hurt a bit, and I would advise you to not move or there might be some dire consequences." "Wait while..." Naruto tried to say something, but before he could even finish, Hayashi had lunged at him with two chakra-laced fingers striking the top of his pelvis. Instantly Naruto fell to his knees in pain, but to his relief his erection had significantly diminished. "Damn it, that hurt, Hyuga-sama, but at least it got the job done," Naruto grumbled out, still slightly in pain, and for some reason he felt that if he ever pissed off the clan head he would be on the receiving end of more of those strikes. Chapter 11: False Accusations. Inside the council chamber, which was a giant circular room that had one long circular table that went all the way around the room, only leaving an opening for where somebody would enter to stand in the center of the room. One side of the table was for the civilian council side and the other side was for the shinobi side, with the Hokage seats separating the two. The entire civilian side was in an uproar over the incident that happened earlier in the market districts. Threats could be heard screamed out randomly. "That monstrosity has to die. It's already killing people, what if my family is next? Did you hear it's defiling the clans of Konoha?" Before anybody else could say anything, the doors to the chamber flew open and the Hokage walked in, and proceeded to sit down in his designated chair. Before the Hokage could even say anything, one of the council members that owned a store in the market district yelled out rudely, "Hokage-sama, that demon killed a man today. He must be put down before he commits any more crimes." Slamming his hands down on the table, the Hokage glared at the man and in a serious tone he said, "That is enough. He has a name, and he did not commit a crime. This intrigued the shinobi side of the council. They had all been wondering how a supposed 4-year-old boy would able to kill a fully trained chunin. He was merely defending himself from an uncalled-for attack. If Naruto did not kill the man, I would have personally executed him myself. That's not true. Another random civilian member yelled out. We have eyewitnesses saying the demon brutally attacked and killed the man for his own sadistic pleasure. The old Hokage clenched his fist and said, if I hear one more person in this room calling him a demon or anything else demeaning, I will strip them of their spot in this council and have them scheduled to have an appointment with Ibiki in torture and interrogation. And speaking of your so-called witnesses, none of them can even be credible, seeing how they all had severely different testimonies. Also, some didn't even put down the proper so-called murder weapon. And I will say this one more time, the Hokage flared a bit of killing intent to get his point across. Naruto did not kill that fool, nor has he ever killed anybody. All he did was defend himself from an attempt on his life. Now, unless anybody wants to have an early lunch break with Ibiki, I recommend we drop the incident. We have another issue with that boy, Hokage-sama. We have reports that the boy was seen corrupting the Hyuga. Surely we cannot risk the integrity of one of our clans. A certain pink-haired council member said. Oh really now? And now why don't you inform me, where did these reports come from? The Hokage asked in an annoyed tone. Yeah, we heard it from that poor man that had died in the market district. He told everybody around him how the boy was seen attempting to corrupt the Hyuga. The same council member said out loud while triumphantly smiling. Really, the Hokage said, slightly exasperated. Well, even if Naruto was really corrupting the Hyuga, that issue falls for the Hyuga clan to deal with, and last I checked, Miss Sakiri Haruno, you are not Lady Hyuga, whom is sitting over there and has yet to speak of a single complaint against the boy, so tell me, what do you have to do with any of Hyuga clan matters? It was no secret that Sakiri Haruno was a status climber, even back in the academy, which she failed miserably in, because she had no talent whatsoever in ninja arts. She was always seen attempting to gain the attention of the boys that had potential to become rich and powerful. One of her first targets was Hayashi Hyuga, whom was known to be one of the prodigies of his generation. But to her eternal displeasure, he only had eyes for one female, and that was his current wife, Hitomi Hyuga. But what infuriated Sakiri even more was knowing that she couldn't even come close to ever even being compared to her. Hitomi was a prestigious, well-connected and extremely rich, but even with all of this she was not stuck up. She was kind, gentle, smart, and the very model of a perfect wife. And when it came to combat, none of the other females even came close to her level. Her skill in Juken was able to put her leaps and bounds above all the other kunoichi to be of her age. Sakiri would often pray to all the gods she knew that hopefully some other boy would be able to catch Hitomi's eyes, because oh how extremely desired she was, whether it be in or hopefully outside of Konoha, the further the better, she always thought. But all the plans were ruined by one boy, but she believed that it was fate that he had come and paired Hayashi and Hitomi together. That boy was none other than Minato Namikaze. Though he was a bit dense, he was a genius. And it didn't hurt that he was amazingly good-looking and handsome. But for some reason he would always turn down her advances, even though she would give him all of her attention. After a while she started to believe he swung for the other team, especially when that damn tomboy Kushina Uzumaki had to been transferred into his class. Soon Sakiri would always find him staring at the red-hair girl whenever he saw her around town, with eyes of admiration and love. Sakiri believed that those eyes should have only been reserved for her, and her only. Which led her to wonder what attracted Minato to Kushina so much. Was it that disgusting tangle of tomato red hair she had? This would keep her up on certain nights questioning why would Minato choose that nasty red hair the Uzumaki girl had, when she believed that her bubblegum pink was clearly a more attractive color. It had to have been that damn tomboy's personality Kushina had. Maybe that was the type of girl Minato was into. Maybe he liked to be told what to do and get bopped on the head from time to time. Deciding that she would forget acting like the regal and pristine Hitomi Hyuga, she would try to act more like the hothead Kushina Uzumaki. So the next day, when she attempted to take a swing at Minato's head from behind, he easily caught her hand by the wrist and flipped her through the air, causing her to land hard on the floor flat on her back. Sakiri was shocked, to say the very least. Minato had never even raised a finger to stop Kushina so much when she bopped him on the head, but when she did it he aggressively countered her and left her laying there with just a mere apology. Then running off to most likely find that red-haired girl. She soon realized that she would never be able to obtain Minato or Hayashi. Realizing that no matter what she did they would choose her over their respective loves, she attempted to get in with other clans. But even then the boys from the other clans would often just ignore her, or they were too damn weird for her to even think about marrying them. So Sakiri in the end just ended up marrying a merchant who owned a small shop and lived a modest life to her displeasure. She never was able to bathe in the glory and riches of being a noble she had believed she rightfully deserved. And now her only accomplishment was her civilian council position, which she had gained after blackmailing and sleeping with various other civilian council members. Breaking out of her thoughts, Sakiri said in desperation, "Of course it matters to me. The Hyuga clan ensures the civilians' safety. If their integrity is compromised, then my safety is compromised. Thus I demand the boy be banished from Konoha so the Hyuga clan can be thoroughly cleansed of his corruption. This is merely for the safety of the rest of us in Konoha. At this point Hitomi had just had it with this woman's blatant accusations of Naruto. So tell me Haruno, how is Naruto-kun corrupting my clan? Putting an extra emphasis on the word my. Like I said before, it compromises the interiority of the Hyuga clan. Hito, before she could finish the sentence, she was hit with a wave-killing intent from the Hyuga matriarch. Standing up and slamming her hands on the top of the table in front of her, Hitomi interrupts her in a cold yet still regal tone. First of all, you should do well to remember your place, commoner. I am the Hyuga matriarch, not you, and I shall be addressed as such. Do you believe yourself equal or above me? Because I for sure know you are not. Even then, someone as high up as Hokage-sama, whom I have had many years of friendship and interactions with, addressed me as Lady Hyuga. So who do you think you are in referring to me by my name so openly? As for you saying my clan has been compromised, which is extremely disrespectful to my husband and I, we will be the ones to deem the integrity of it, because we are the leaders of the Hyuga clan, not you, some civilian who fancies herself as a member of the Shinobi Council. And also, if you or anybody in this council dares to mock Naruto-kun in my presence ever again, I will demonstrate to you all personally why we the Hyugas are known as the strongest in Konoha. Activating her Byakugan to further push her point across. Fugaka, head of the Uchiha clan, whom was sitting a couple of seats to her left, had his right eye twitch in displeasure at Hitomi's last statement. Even though he knew what she was saying was true, at the moment the Hyugas were the strongest in Konoha, and not even the Uchiha could argue that. Their sheer numbers, skill in taijutsu, and their Byakugan eyes made it impossible to take that throne away from them. Even though the Uchiha clan might have been one of the stronger clans in Konoha, their glory days were now far behind them. But even during the time when the Uchiha were at their strongest, they still did not have the privilege to call themselves the strongest in Konoha. It was always the Senju who held that honor, and now, even though the Senju were all but dead, it was those damned Hyugas who took that rank from them. Before Sakiri could retort to Hitomi, the door to the council chamber swung up, and in walked Hayashi with Naruto behind him. Hayashi bowed to the Hokage, then gave a nod to the other Shinobi Council members and took his seat next to a smirking Hitomi, which slightly scared Hayashi. His wife was usually a gentle, harmless flower, but don't let that fool you. The Hyuga matriarch had a mean streak, and when she was smirking he knew something had just gone down, and she had just put somebody in their place, or somebody was about to get their asses handed to them royally. Naruto, who had stayed at the entrance of the room, walked into the center of the room, faced the Hokage, and got on one knee, bowing to the Sandaime. Hokage-sama, and members of the council. My name is Uzumaki, Naruto, and I am here as requested. As he looked back up, he noticed many of the female members of the Shinobi Council were eyeing him with looks similar to the ones Anko had given him earlier. Tsum, the clan head for Inuzuka clan, leaned over the table and said to Naruto with a sickly sweet voice, My Minakuin, it's been too long. This caused Naruto to slightly flinch in fear when Tsum licked her lips. Suddenly Tsum was hit on the back of the head by Hitomi, who was sitting next to her. She said, Tsum-chan, let's not scare Mina, I mean Naruto-kun. She finished with a slight blush. Yes, let's all please calm down. The Hokage quickly said he had felt the sudden spike in pheromones being released by the females of the room. Now, before we continue this meeting, I would like to ask the civilian council to please leave, seeing that they have no part in this meeting. At first they were protesting about being told to leave, arguing that they should know what was to happen to the boy. But they immediately stopped and ran out upon feeling the killing intent from the Hokage and females of the Shinobi Council. The moment the door was closed behind them, Hitomi asked, Naruto-kun, what happened to you? Yeah, clearly Sandaime was lying to us when he said you were only a 4-year-old. Tsum said with a toothy grin. If I'm not mistaken, you are Lady Inuzuka. I would like to assure you that Hokage-sama was not lying when he said I am 4 years old. And Lady Hyuga, as for my transformation, it was a side effect of a defensive mechanism that can be attributed to my condition. Naruto had no idea what he just said, but that's what Hashirama and Kurama came up with, and told him to say if anybody asked what happened. Huh? Tsum asked. Hitomi turned to her and said, let's just pretend it's puberty. Hayashi's sweat dropped at Hitomi's attempt at a simplified explanation to the Inuzuka, whom were not always known for their intelligence. That was the Nara's cup of area of expertise. A couple of seats to Tsum's left, the Nara clan had sneezed slightly while he was half asleep. Yes, we will put it into the reports as him going through a stage of puberty. Hayashi's sweat dropped again and said mentally, seriously, Hokage-sama, you too. But we have more important issues to discuss. Naruto here has recently unlocked a bloodline that hasn't been seen in Konoha for many years. The Hokage continued. Hearing about a bloodline instantly caught the attention of all the council members, especially about one that hasn't been seen in Konoha. This was even able to catch the attention of the usually sleep and lazy Nara, Shikaku. And what bloodline is that, Hokage-sama? He asked. One that is very important to Konoha. You could say that it is the roots of the very city, the Hokage said. The moment the Hokage said that, the lazy Nara knew exactly what bloodline the Hokage was talking about. Mokutan, but how? the Nara asked himself. The Hokage saw the look of realization on the Nara's face, and then the look of slight confusion, and he knew exactly why he was so confused. Turning back toward the rest of the council, he said, "While I could tell you what his bloodline is, I think it would be more believable if I had Naruto-kun demonstrate it to you what it was instead." Reaching inside his robe, he took out 5 shuriken. Then proceeded to aim at Naruto with them, but before he could throw them he was stopped by Hitomi. "Hokage-sama, what do you think you're doing?" she yelled out in fear for Naruto's life. "Lady Hyuga, I'm merely demonstrating his bloodline, you do not need to fret, no harm will come to Naruto," the Hokage said with a carefree tone. "What do you mean no harm? You are aiming shuriken at him. Don't we have some practice shuriken we can use instead?" Hitomi asked with a worried tone. "Lady Hyuga, there is only Jonin or higher ranked shinobi in this room. Do you really believe any one of us would carry around practice equipment? And don't worry, I won't aim for any vital areas," the Hokage said, still in his carefree tone. Just as he was about to throw them again, Hitomi interrupted him again. "Wait, can we use less shuriken? I mean, why 5? Naruto swore he heard groans of disappointment coming from some of the council when Hitomi had interrupted the Hokage this time. "I swear people in Konoha must have a thing for child abuse because I'm beginning to lose count on the amount of times people have tried to kill me already." Naruto thought. Suddenly he heard Hashirama in his mind. "Hey Naruto," Hashirama said. "Yes, Shodame-sama?" Naruto replied. "I have a plan to mess with the old monkey a bit. Listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you," Hashirama said, while chuckling with a giant grin that could almost match one of Kurama's. Back in the outside world, Hitomi was still arguing with the Hokage. "How about a pen or pencil? Can you throw those instead?" Hitomi asked. "Look, Lady Hyuga, I assure you that no harm will come to Naruto-kun. I care for him just as much as you do," the Hokage argued back, still in a carefree tone but slightly irritated now. "So just have a seat and prepare to be amazed by the show." With that, the Hokage drew back his arm extra quickly, as to not be interrupted again by Hitomi, and threw all 5 of the shuriken lighting fast at Naruto. Thud. 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 Naruto let out a gasp, as did the entire council room, as all 5 of the shuriken hit him dead on in multiple vital areas. Naruto fell to his knees in pain, then flat onto his face, unmoving. Suddenly the entire room was flooded with killing intent. Everybody turned to the point of origin, and it was revealed to be a extremely pissed off Hitomi Hyuga, whose Byakugan was already activated and flaring dangerously. She yelled out in a voice that Sarutobi swore could freeze the deepest parts of hell. "Hiruzen!" Hiruzen Sarutobi, who was known as the god of shinobi and student of both the first and second Hokages, knew there was no justice in the world that would be able to save him from the wrath of the Hyuga matriarch at the moment. And even if Hitomi didn't kill him, Jiraiya or Ma would probably do it the moment they heard that he had threw shuriken at the boy, knowing that he had no prior training that would have allowed him to dodge them. Heck, a newly promoted Chunin probably wouldn't have been able to dodge them at the speed he had thrown them at, no less a boy who was only 4 years old and no prior training because he didn't grow up in a ninja village. It was at this moment Hitomi charged at him with her palm raised, which by the way was glowing so brightly one could have easily mistaken it for a Rasengan. "Oh shit," the Hokage muttered out. "What if Naruto has ancestors of Namikaze and Senju clan bloodline?" Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.